Greetings, this is the Counter Racist Evolving Engineer Program. The acronym for the program is CREE, C-R-E-E, and that is my handle. The date is June 22nd, 2019. It's about 4:15 on the left coast, the Pacific coast of the United States, and 7:15 on the East Coast. And I know that we're only going to have Kofi for a little while. He is going to be with me doing this film review. It's as close as we can get to a counter-racist film watch party where we can dissect it as it goes. I mean, obviously we can't all, it's just not possible. It's just the mechanics of getting skilled counter-racists together all in one place from over the globe, to watch a movie, whether it's on Amazon or what have you, and to just stop it and dissect it piece by piece. That's not possible. And then of course they're, copyright, we can't do it that way. So there are some stills, and I think that I've stayed within the fair use boundaries of film review, and the more commentary we have, the safer it'll be. Now, I had already told Kofi that I had some housekeeping to do before we started the film review, and it won't take long, but it is important. It's pretty heavy housekeeping, and however it strikes people is however it strikes people, but I think it needs to be done. So, as I was doing this, I realized that, and this particular, you have no idea, you have no idea when you're working what things you're going to consider as an artist. You hear that from musicians. You also hear that from painters or authors, whatever. You don't have any idea while you're doing it what things you're going to consider to have been the most representative of who you are and your expression. And I didn't even know about this film until you hear me say this all the time. And yes, it is a function of my age, which is a part of this heavy housekeeping. So yeah, we're going to do a review of Sorry to Bother You, and Kofi brought it to my attention. I didn't even know that it existed, and then found out that it was actually in theaters in 2018. But in the process of putting together this film review, because this film just knocked me off my keister, I realized in the process of it that it's gonna be pretty close to giving the listeners everything I've got as anything I've ever done. This broadcast, this channel is for those who can see. And Kofi had pointed out when he brought it to my attention on Facebook that this movie, Sorry to Bother You, is sort of it's a combination of They Live, The Matrix. I would even say The Hunger Games. There was something else in there, but it was so layered. It reflects what film is done now, how film is done by non-Black people, especially. I don't recall seeing a film that didn't have anti-blackness or racism embedded in it. They make their work, they're fun, and so this film review again is for those who can see. It's for those who, like in the film They Live, if you've ever seen that cult. They call it cult fiction, cult film. There are a lot of stuff. There are a lot of films that are called cult classics. But cult is not really, I think, an adequate description. It has a following for those people who have the insight to see it. And there are things that I have not always had an insight to see. But these kinds of releases are done, I think, because it's a test, but they're pretty sure that only a limited amount of people have the ability to see what they're broadcasting. But they're also testing to see just how far that reach goes, just how many Black people do actually understand it. Now, these kind of films, like Planet of the Apes, like Hunger Games, cannot have a one-to-one correspondence of the oppressed and black people. That would be too clear of a message. So they cannot do that. And had the writer and director of this film, Sorry to Bother You, Boots Riley, whose picture I will show you now. He's an interesting looking guy, right? I took all three of those pictures for a reason. Had he done that one-to-one correspondence where it was very clear that all of the characters or categories of characters were black people, there was no way that the film would have been allowed to have been distributed and funded so that it could be produced. But I will say, there is no real way of knowing how many people really understood this film. There is no real way of knowing how many people this broadcast is really reaching, because these platforms are controlled. So if you logically think about what would be the documented COINTELPRO tactics of the 1960s and 70s progressed into the age of social media platforms, what would be the kinds of disinformation that you would expect to occur, right? So you would expect disinformation to occur on these platforms. So you don't really know, when you're looking at statistics, if they're real, depending upon how much threat the people who control these platforms consider the information that you are giving to be. Okay, so as I said, I'm going to be sharing what I consider some intimate and core parts of myself, as it's a part of the analysis of the film and it can't be separated. So we'll start with the fact that when one of the Planet of the Apes films came out, I don't remember which one it was, 3 or 4, but it was the first day that the film had come out. And this will be the second time I've said this, but the last time it was on the other venue, Blog Talk Radio. When it came out, I was still married, and we went to go see the film on the very first day that it was shown, and in the very first showing at that theater. So the very first showing of the very first day that this particular Planet of the Apes film was showing. And we got there about 20 minutes early. It was a weekday on a Friday, and we barely were able to find a seat. Now, the movie theater that we used to go to, the one that's closest to where we reside, did together. I still live here. The customers there at that mall, because it's a theater and a mall, are 90% non-European. 90% non-European. Mostly Filipinos and Mexican, probably 70%, I don't know, 60-40 of Filipinos to Mexicans, or vice versa. My numbers are a little off. There are about 10 to 20% black people, and every once in a while you'll see a white person. You hardly ever see like a pink European type person there. So, and it's the same thing with the theater. But on that particular day, when we arrived 20 minutes early for the film on a weekday, it was a Friday, to see this Planet of the Apes film, every seat was taken, and 90% of the people sitting in those seats were European white people. And when we walked in, I don't think there were any other black people in that theater in that showing. Almost every head turned, and you could sense that they felt our presence there. They did not expect us to be there, and it did disrupt their planned viewing experience, because of course we were spouses, and We had some experience in counter-racist film review, a lot of it, because I mean, as we would watch things at home or at the theater, we were always doing it. And we'd actually done one together on Blog Talk Radio. We did one of Precious, but at any rate, because of that, when we would see certain scenes and we knew what they meant to each other, you know what you do with your spouse or your significant other, we would just look at each other, momentarily. We might lean over and whisper something. But what was happening throughout that experience was that people in rows in front of us were like sometimes 2 rows in front of us, 4 rows in front of us. White people they kept looking back at us during the film. Now, I have no reason to tell you this if it's not true, okay? So when these productions are put together, what Boots Riley reflects is his understanding that every detail is planned. Every detail is there to plant a seed. And many of the details are there that non-black people will catch, but black people will not. And I've never seen a black director or black writer be able to write a film like that with the kind of as close to the kind of insight that non-black people have on the system of racism as this one. So Boots Riley is an interesting guy, and this is the reason that I took 3 pics of him. It's because he's not normal. He's not normal. He's what you would call one of those strange Negroes. I really want to use another term. And I actually think I can use the word nigga because Microsoft Word does not flag that. So it'll be interesting to see if YouTube does. He is what my ex-husband and I used to refer to as, the crazy psychedelic niggas. And my ex-husband was one of those. And then prior to that, the most serious relationship I had was also one of those. There's these guys that love funk, like Jimi Hendrix. They're not normal. They're eccentric, like George Clinton. They see things from out of left field. And so you're going to see a reference to or hear a reference to leftedness, left eye within this film review. If you've seen the film, you know what I'm talking about. And I really couldn't find any normal pictures of this guy. This guy was born in 1971. The most normal quote-unquote picture I could find of him was the one on the left, but it's not representative of the pictures you'll find if you Google Boots Riley. He's just always in some sort of really super funky pose that's like almost like out of Parliament or Funkadelic out of the 1970s. And this gives him an ability to see things from a different perspective, but he certainly got things right. I was not able to find any pictures of his significant other. I always do that with black males. But this is the kind of guy who produced this film, and I think probably in the history of black people, these types of black people are the ones who are responsible for most of the progressiveness throughout tens of thousands of years of history, if not more. They just try all kinds of crazy things. Now, a lot of times things might turn upside down, but they're just the most imaginative, progressive geniuses. Geniuses don't always have to be weird, but a lot of times they are, because they're eccentric. Eccentric, the meaning of eccentric is off-center. So he's an off-center guy, but you have that to thank for the genius of this film. I know a lot of people saw it and they thought it was just funny, just like a lot of people thought The Matrix was an action film and not a film on reality, a comment on reality. A lot of people found it just to be too weird because he's a weird guy. And these are people I consider intelligent, and black people I consider intelligent, and black people who have insight into the system of anti-blackness. But the approach was just too weird for them. And I don't think that they could separate that. But I guess maybe I just got accustomed to it, and maybe I'm a little bit weird. That I think of myself as a pretty. I'm somewhere in between there. I don't know. I'm just attracted to eccentric types. My father is eccentric. I guess that's part of it. I don't consider myself exceptionally eccentric, but I do appreciate eccentric people and what they bring to the table. So that is the comment on who brought this to us. Written, directed by this guy. This crazy, weird, offbeat, out of left field, eccentric nigga called Boots Riley. And I don't know if he would like to be called a nigga, so I take that back if he would object. Okay. The lead actor playing the lead role of Cassius Green. Let me make sure, yeah, I got everything unmiked. I'm sorry, unmuted. Lakeith Stanfield. So he has this long resume, right? Lakeith Stanfield, I just remember him from the film Get Out, which compared to this film, sorry to bother you, is a cartoon. And of course, I wanted to check out what his choices were for partners. Now, you never know when somebody's going to switch up on you. But he's at the height of he's really at the height of his game right now, and you see who his chosen partner is. She's an unambiguously black woman, and I thought that was a great choice by Boots Riley to cast Lakeith Stanfield in the lead role of Cassius Green. And of course, Cassius, I don't know how many people are able to associate that very quickly with Cassius Clay, otherwise known as Muhammad Ali. But just a nice play on words, and which makes sense because the writer, Boots Riley, is not only, I think this was his first venture into directing. I'm not sure about writing, script writing, but he was a rapper. So his skill at play on words, which is a really big deal with non-black people, particularly European white people in their films, their play on words that a lot of times we miss, he's going to be really skilled at that. And so, using the word Cassius for Cassius Clay, meaning Muhammad Ali, and then Cassius Green, of course, the play on words is that Cash is green, and then that's used in the film. But yeah, this is his choice, so ladies, you can kind of relax a bit. I can relax too. And he was in Get Out, and he is also a well-known, I guess he's done a lot of, or he's a staple character in the series Atlanta, which I don't know if that's if that's network TV. I don't know because I don't have network TV, but I know I can get those series on Amazon. But yeah, his resume is way longer than that. I'm sure many of you know the things that he's been in. And so now I'm inviting the only person who's called in, and I'm inviting anybody to call in and participate in this counter-racist film review. There's going to be so much stuff that I've missed. I want it to be a collaborative process, but if no one else calls in, hopefully we got Kofi. So Kofi, if you're there, can we establish connection now?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here. And yeah, I'm looking forward to discussing this. Can you hear me good?
I can hear you great. Fantastic.
Okay.
And hopefully my levels are good. I think I checked my mic levels, so hopefully you're not drowning me out.
Yeah, well, you sound pretty good. I don't know how mine is, though.
Desktop is at its max, so we should be okay. Usually, whoever's on the line, the conference line comes through nice, so it looks we should have even levels at this point. So this is the beginning of the review. I want to take this little thing off here. I don't want this to mar it. And why is it here? Oh. I know how to do it. Okay, there we go.
But before you go into the review, I wanted to say a little bit about Atlanta. That's a show kind of made by Donald Glover, another young black actor. He also does a lot of I don't know what you would classify this kind of movie as, and this kind of media in general that has that's just contemporary to what's going on in the world. He does things like that, and through his music and his other art, and he's also a weird N word like Boots Riley.
Yeah.
But he has a white baby mama,
Yeah.
like, and he got her when he was not when he started to get money, like when he was kind of at the height. It kind of surprised me because I was actually like a kind of a big fan of that guy. Like, I liked his music, I liked his writing and all of that. And then he kind of came out of left field with his white baby mom. But
Or she's Asian, right? Isn't she Asian? Or is she white? I thought she was Asian.
I think white.
Okay.
There's not been too many pictures. I'm talking about Donald Glover.
Right.
Yeah, there's not been too many pictures of them together, and the ones that were there don't really show her so clearly. Because I've been actually looking a lot, and it's not there. So she could be Asian, but from what I thought white when I first saw her.
Okay. That's
yeah.
So
yeah.
There's the value of the weird N. And so your policy is not to use that word. Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty much. It makes life easier on the internet if you don't say it.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Sometimes it's
not for any any other reason than white folks like to punish you when you say it. So I just
for sure. Yes. But I think we can probably get away with it in this film review. We should be able to, only because in the film itself, it's a very key part of the story, as you know, right?
It
is. So there were parts of the heavy sort of setting up of it that I left off, and so let me double back and get that. I don't know if this is going to be over the line. I don't know if this is going to be over the line to take me off, but I made a decision to go ahead and do it anyway. And so you can choose to believe me or not. But I have been warned, and I've been warned very sternly. And I wasn't warned that I was going to be physically, that anything was going to happen to me, like they were going to shoot me or anything like that. But I was warned that my life was going to be dismantled as I know it. Okay. And I cannot tell you what it was. I know exactly what it was that I said that caused me to get the warning, but I cannot tell you. I've made the decision. I know that they do not want me to tell you what that is. If you happen to be a connoisseur, one of the very few connoisseurs of this program, or I don't even know how many are, because the stats are not, I don't believe them. But if you happen to be a connoisseur and you're just super, super interested in what that might be, in time you might figure out what it is. I cannot tell you what it is I said that caused the warning. But as a result of that warning, I know that I cannot, there is something that I said I was going to do that I cannot do. Now, so that leaves me with the question of how far I can go. And I'm not even sure if this one is going to be over the line. But I've decided to go ahead and do it and see what happens. Now, so part of that is that you should expect tech disruptions. If not during the live, in the uploading of it. That's what happened on the last program, although that was not the one for which I got the warning. They just took disconcerting segments out of it that made it hard to understand what the transitions were from one sentence to the next. So you might be able to expect that. Also, we might be able to, we should be expecting stat disruptions. So I do have a request. The usual request is if you do like the video, please just take the time to do it. It seems like it's harder to do it on a phone than on a desktop, or a laptop. But if you do like the video, please take the time to like it. If you're doing that during the live, which is what happened last time, there were 11 people who clicked that like button during the live stream, and those 11 likes just disappeared. And I have no idea how many likes disappeared even after that. I never got them back. So my request is that you would like it And then if you feel comfortable and if you feel safe doing so, in the comment section, also after you've clicked the like button, if you could just write in the comment section, I liked this video, along with anything else that you had to say about it. Now, of course, I'm announcing that as a strategy, so they could counter it, but I thought I would give that a shot. Is there anything else before we go on?
Before we go on with the review, should I make mention of some of the things I noticed, or do you want to just move transition into that?
Noticed about what?
The film.
Oh yeah. No, hang on one second. I just want to make sure I've set everything up right. Hang on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so I do want to say this. I want to say this about Boots Riley, and I want to say this about myself. I want to say this about Kofi and people like us. I want to say this about us weird ends, okay? And it's about this broadcast, and then we're going to go into what things he's noticed and what things I noticed. A lot of times when we're making progress, the weird ends, we see things that other people don't see. Now, that's a double-edged sword, because you tend to be out there and people think you don't know what you're talking about. You're paranoid, you're seeing into things, or you're reaching, etc., etc. But the people who run things, the system of anti-blackness, they know, okay, these ends see. Okay. Now, that could be dangerous if they spread that to other people. Obviously, there are things I didn't used to see. We all had people who served as temporary, or at different points in our lives they pointed us in different directions. Okay, so this isn't a claim to unique genius. I'm not saying unique genius doesn't exist. I'm just saying I'm not making that claim right now. What I am saying is I do think that what Boots Riley did here was genius, and what I'm saying is when the weird ends make progress in understanding how this system works, that's dangerous. And so you might wonder, why do they let the weird ends have a platform at all? Why don't they cut them off at the knees one way or another? They have many ways to do it. Well, here's the reason they don't do it. And you're going to see this in the film itself. Boots Riley does a great job of explaining it. The reason they don't do that is because that would be illogical. In other words, if the people you're targeting, if your target has had a certain skill set, a certain knowledge base up to a certain point, and they behave in a very predictable manner, and then you see someone who's departed from that, you see someone who's more able, who sees into something, what would be gained? What would be lost if you cut that person off at the knees? Knowledge about this type of person, because it is unlikely that this will be the only time in history you will see such a person. In fact, you don't know if this is the beginning of a proliferation of such people. So you need to study them, and you need to study them as early as possible. So you want to hear what they have to say. You want to try various tactics on them to see how they respond to levels of threat, to levels of bribery. You want to see what effects that has on their behavior, what effect that has on their speech. You want to see all that kind of stuff. And you want to see where their mind is going. How fast are they going to progress? How much more are they going to see? You want to know how to handle these kind of people. This is the reason that you let them go. This is the reason that they let us go. That's exactly why. And they bank on the fact that there will be few enough people who will see what it is that they're pointing out for it to be a win for them. In other words, if they get more benefit out of learning how these people behave and speak, then it costs them in terms of the people that they turn on to the new information. So with that, two weird ends, self-appointed, are going to tell you what we saw in this, what I call genius film. And so you go right ahead, Kofi. Lead us off.
All right. Okay. So I'm going to start with a light one that I noticed. There is a movement in this country to okay, so there's a movement in this country to shift um, the image of Asian males from what they used to be, which is just asexual, wimps,
Mm-hmm.
to manly men. Like the Asian males are working hard to shift their image. I guess they're tired of the old image of just some wimp with a small you know what who nobody likes, not even their own women, to a more manly man. And the Asian actor, I don't know his name, he was in Walking Dead, but he played a role that I hadn't seen before in a movie.
Right.
He was he was the sexual counterpart to Lakeith
Right.
in battling for his woman for Lakeith's woman, and I hadn't seen that before. But it goes right along with the movement that I've noticed. And there's quite a few Asian male YouTube personalities and
Mm.
Facebook personalities who are always discussing the history of how the United States, and I guess Europe as well, has taken their image and just you know done away with with their sexual prowess.
Yeah.
And I learned that earlier in the country's history, when they first started coming here in more in bigger numbers. um, there was the white males were in California, at least, were a little bit scared that they were going to be taking their women away.
Mm.
So they worked hard to break that image. And yeah, and like I said, it's the first time I've seen them be a counterbalance to a black male. And I also know that they didn't go all the way with it in this movie,
Mm-hmm.
because at a certain point, Lakeith asked his lady. We spoiling, right?
Right.
We're
Right.
not
So,
hiding spoilers.
well, yeah, this is a spoiler. So if I've already I said on Facebook, this is a spoiler. So if you don't want to have the film spoiled, you need to click off, watch the movie, and
and
then come
and
back.
come back.
But let me say
Right,
this.
right.
But let me say this. I did try to arrange each slide picture as the movie progressed, so I did have slides for that.
Okay.
So what
So
I
we can go
so the
we
plan
can
is
go
to
over it when you get. Go ahead.
yeah. So we can go over that when we get to it. So the plan is to comment on the slides we see before us, and then if there are
Right.
any slides that I left, obviously I didn't take the whole film. So if there are
Sure.
related scenes that I don't have that you think of, and just bring them up. But if I do have them, I'll say, well, wait, hang on, I've got a slide for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. Now, on your point, even though we've spoiled that part of both the review and the movie, wasn't there a popular film in the '90s that it was like a Romeo and Juliet, where it was a black female? I think, was it even Aaliyah that started?
Aaliyah.
Yeah, it was Aaliyah that started it. What was the name of that? And it was
Romeo
an
Must Die.
okay, and it was an Asian. And he was also the A. So this has been it started maybe 20 years ago, huh? Because I would say that maybe 20.
Yeah, but that movie didn't make any waves. I don't think. I
Okay.
don't think that movie made any waves. I think they were trying, or maybe, yeah, they were trying, but it wasn't, one, it wasn't widespread like it is today, and two, yeah, it didn't do much.
But
It
I
didn't do
mean,
much.
to your point, even beyond that, even and we haven't gotten to that slide, but to your point, just the fact that when they have the hip hop dance contests, um, they're way overrepresented in
Mm-hmm.
the premier
Agreed.
hip hop dancers. So they've been, trying to, and as we all know, hip hop is like sort of is a vessel for modern masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
So just they're trying to their movement into that, and if you live on I don't know if you see that in New York area, but if you live in the Pacific, on the Pacific side, where there are a lot of them, you definitely see that they've just taken over hip hop. Them even more so than Hispanics.
Yeah. No, I see it over here, but I'm sure it's on a very smaller scale. When I was younger, I'd go to certain hip hop parties, and they'd be represented there. And I don't and you know I don't see Asians like that in New York. Like they're not. There's not a lot of them. They have their little isolated communities, and they
Mm-hmm.
usually stay in there. You know,
Okay.
but I would see them in our hip hop parties wearing their hip hop gear, and you know so it's yeah, it's break dancing,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
basically. Yeah, it's just really huge. Okay, now to this first scene. So this is really the opening scene, and as I caught it, and you will see a person sort of standing in the garage there, and that was a scene in which he had just finished making love to his girlfriend. They had just finished making love, and the garage door popped open because he actually lives in the garage. That's like his apartment. And the apartment that he lives in the garage of a house that is owned by his uncle, and he pays rent to his uncle. Okay, and he's behind, that's actually where he lives. And the red car that you see out there, the little bucket, the hoopty, which is barely hanging together, was given to him by his uncle. This is how he lives. He does not um, he does not participate in the alternative uh, economy. This is really very realistic. This is a guy who's just trying to make his money legally, and this is how he's living. Now, a lot of people, I've even seen reviews on this being dystopian. This is not dystopian at all. I know three persons who were very close friends of my very few friends who lived in garages just like this. This is in Oakland in Northern California. But here in Southern California, it's the same thing. People living in garages where they're paying for this. They live in the garages of a relative or a friend. And the garages are not converted in any way where there is actual plumbing or anything like electricity except for an extension cord. But this is how people are living if they're not living on the street. This is very common. So there's nothing dystopian about this. This right here is
see,
yeah,
can
very
I push
realistic.
back a little bit?
Go ahead.
You say this movie is not a dystopia, or just him living in the garage is not dystopian.
I would say, but two things: him living in the garage is not dystopian, and the overall film feel of the film to me is not dystopian. There are dystopian elements. There are dystopian elements. Um, but I would say it's 80-20. 80% realistic, 20% dystopian. What's your read?
Um, I think it's quite dystopian, but it's just got a filter over it, like a pretty filter over it. Let me give a couple examples of why I think it's a dystopia. One, there's only three channels, so that means that the government or whoever runs this country at this point is um, is focused is actually hyper focused on the people and controlling what they see compared to today in real life where we have the internet, we have thousands of channels, and it seems that everybody watches TV. Like it's not even it doesn't even it doesn't even seem like people don't like people opt out of TV. Another one is there's no work at all. There's only work worry free. Um,
No.
I don't think there's any work in this. I don't think I think that there's no. You either work for worry free living for them, or you work for them selling for them, and that's it.
Oh, I didn't get that sense. And I would like other people to call in. Do we have any other people on the line? Because I would really like to know it, or just type it in the live chat. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
um, I didn't get that sense. I got the sense that I didn't get that sense. I got the sense that um, I mean, I saw stores. They didn't focus on them,
Mm,
but my sense was that it was a very limited economy. That people were really having a hard time making it because I mean,
mm-hmm.
just say for instance, the uncle. So let me give you my logic on that. The uncle kept pestering. It was not really pestering, asking Cassius Green for the rent. And he said, if I don't get the rent, they're going to foreclose on my house. Okay. Now, and then he at some point said, well, forget about that, what you owe me anyways. They're going to foreclose on my house. I've been thinking about just going ahead and doing the worry-free thing. Um, if there had not been alternative forms of employment, some other ways to get money, he would have been foreclosed on way before that. He wouldn't have just all of a sudden started thinking about going for worry-free, because a little bit of rent for the garage that Cassius was paying him couldn't have been paying for his food and whatnot. So there had to be other ways. It's just a very difficult economy like the one we have now, where to such an extent. Now this is where like it leans a little bit dystopian, and it's exaggerated. But you
Mm-hmm.
see Lyft vehicles and Uber vehicles and people working 2 minimum wage jobs at Jack in the Box and stuff, and still living out of their cars. And for black people, even much more the case. So I mean, it's exaggerated, but I didn't get the sense, even just from that one thing I told you about his uncle, that the only employment was worry free and Regal View. It's just things are so tough that it's a level of coercion into there. We go back into the coercion thing again, which so this is what I mean about this. I'm giving you almost all I've got, because to me it was very consistent with a lot of things that I've already said about the levels of coercion and what slavery really is and what it probably has been for the last 400 years. You see what I'm saying? Where if people take over your means to provide for yourself, you are coerced into a level of labor and remuneration that is basically slavery. I'm kind of spoiling things, but yeah, that I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. You thought that the only work available was working for the telemarketer Regal View or working for Worry Free
Uh,
as a contract
well,
slave?
okay, so there are other companies out there. You're right. Regal View is worry free, by the way.
Yeah.
And okay, so maybe it's an early dystopia. It's like an early dystopia, it's like maybe 20, 30, 40 years in the future, it'll be a full dystopia.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do remember that there was also some Asian car company or something who was using the labor from Worry Free to
For
build
do
their cars
Yeah,
or cell phones or whatever it was.
yeah, to do all
So
kinds
maybe,
of things. Yeah.
right, right. So maybe either A, maybe your definition and my definition of dystopia are different,
Yeah.
or B, it's just an early dystopia that hasn't fully formed yet.
I don't think we're disagreeing. You know what I mean? For you to say, well, maybe it's an early dystopia, and for me to say that it's 80-20 reality dystopia, it's kind of saying the same thing. I sort of think it's kind of saying, I don't know. To
Yeah,
me,
yeah, no, that sounds accurate. I won't push back at that.
okay, so that was the opening scene. All right, now this is his girlfriend, and um, couple things. I mean, so many things that you notice in this girlfriend. So this was the girlfriend that he had just finished making love with when the garage door popped open, and she's an artist, and there are a lot of messages that are projected through her self-made jewelry, her earrings. Um, that's one. Number two, you'll see a little black mark under her eye. And in which eye is it? It's her left eye. And you start thinking about Lisa Left Eye Lopez. You start thinking about conspiracies, and a lot of stuff. I think poets, rappers, screenwriters, and so on. A lot of times, I think things come up from their subconscious that have several meanings and layers that maybe they weren't even consciously aware of, but that their subconscious reasoning contributed to the layering of it. I'm not saying that a lot of the layering wasn't conscious, but sometimes part of it is subconscious. But there's that left eye there. She's got a little mark under it. Now, and then her look. So if we were just to say, just for the purposes of this discussion and this film review, that that's her real hair, um, she would be very borderline. And with a later picture where you get to see her eyes are kind of bluish. If we assume it for the purposes of the film, we're not looking at her as an actual real person, but just for the purposes of the film, um, this would not be a black woman. And there's a point in the film later on where Cassius makes that point because she does some performance art, and in the performance piece that she does, her very first one, she's got these huge pieces, like I don't know what they're made of, sculptures, metal, painting of Africa all around the world, while she does her all around the walls, while she does a performance piece. And Cassius goes up to her and asks her, and the way that he emphasizes the words is very important. He says, "Can I ask you a question? Would you, emphasis on you, why would you choose Africa as a theme?" Very, very important. There is also a scene going forward that's parallel to that, in which Cassius is sitting with his co-workers because he has to find work, right? And so he finds work as a telemarketer. And so they're all in a bar where they had gotten together because they were going to discuss unionizing. And at some point, something came up about Italians, and some black person said it was Cassius's best friend, whose name was Jermaine. No, Salvador. Yeah. Salvador said, "Italians aren't white." And everybody at the table, including Danny Glover, who was in this film, Danny Glover and everybody else, the Asian guy at the table, said, "Yes, they are." And Salvador, Cassius's best friend, said, "Since when?" And everybody at the table said, "Forever, for like the last 60 years. So, again, you see that Boots Riley is really integrating into this, recognition that there are really only two races, right? As you've been saying, black and non-black. And that startled me.
That startled me as well, and it was the Asian that said for 60 years, and I was kind of blown away a little bit too when I heard that, because prior to that scene, the movie shifted between that scene and the rest of the movie. It went from kind of realistic to being extra. The movie became extra after like a little bit after that scene too. It changed into something that I didn't expect, because when it started, it was just I thought it was just some funny movie just from the previews, and then they kind of shocked us, and then started putting the less realistic. I don't want to say less realistic, but the more artsy. It became more artsy and more. It's kind of difficult for me to find the words, but after that scene, the movie, the way the movie was changed a little bit.
Interesting. Okay. Now, what do you get from her earrings? It says "deep in your face." That's layered in itself. Deep in your face. The first thing is, of course, that she's saying, "Look, what is happening in the world that you are blind to is right in your face. It's hiding in plain sight." That is the surface reading of it. Did you get another reading from it, though?
Well, the earrings were okay, there were a couple things in the movie that gave you a message. Her earrings, before or after that scene, she had an electric chair, which I guess
I remember that.
had an electric chair with somebody sitting in it, and I think they were talking about the worry-free camps when she had that in there on her ear. But there was also that picture that Lakeith had. It kept changing depending on his mood or his actions. So I'm I don't know exactly what Boots was doing with the earrings in that picture. All I did know was that it was kind of meant as as a story marker to kind of move you forward.
Right. Deep in your face, like just look at, see what you're looking at, which is what Neely Fuller would always say. And then I don't know if this came up from his subconscious or whether or not he consciously put it in there, which is that the face is what distinguishes. In other words, uh, you heard Cassius say, "Why would you choose African?" In other words, you're not African, which is usually used as a synonym for black, right? Which is, that's really what he said. And
And
mhm,
and she didn't push back.
she sure didn't.
She said, "I'm using it because Africa is, whatever, whatever, whatever." She was talking about Africa as something that's not her.
Okay.
She was using it as an example of exploitation or what have you, which was a little unexpected because usually when you see somebody like her in a movie,
Hmm.
um, she's a black person.
Yes.
Um, right, so yeah, that was a little unexpected.
Yeah, yeah, it's going right along with, I had said, many people will disagree, I'm sure, but I had said that for me, the only thing that was noteworthy in the congressional hearings that took place this week on HR 40 was just that there was a white congressman who several times on the mic entered into the record the term anti-black racism. And so with that, I took that as the beginning of the official end of the pretense that racism is anything other than anti-blackness. It's not biased towards other groups. It's not, what do you call it? There's, what's it called when it's the ethnicity and you have a bias towards it? Eth-
Ethnocentrism.
that's it, ethnocentrism. It's not ethnocentrism, but racism itself, it's just anti-blackness. And so Boots was kind of ahead of the curve. And so when I look at these earrings and say deep in your face, it's what we've been doing on this channel all along, right? Um, what we're saying is look at that face. Look at the face. The face it's deep in your face. What you're, and even at the end when it was about the nostrils, even that part. But
Yeah.
it's deep in your
So
face.
so the earrings though,
Mm-hmm.
the other earring says "bury the rag deep in
Oh,
your face."
I didn't know that. Bury the
Yeah,
rag.
the other one.
Oh, okay, that changes things. That I didn't. I don't. And
Does
so
it? What is that? What is it? Does "bury the rag" have something to do with menstrual or what? I don't know.
yeah, I don't know because some of the stuff is going to just be chaotic. You got. I feel like um, in films like this, there are going to be elements that are going to be chaotic that have no message at all because to have it you've got to have some chaos in order to obfuscate, in order to make things blurry. You can't make things too clear. So with her, she had a lot of stuff that was feminist, right? So she would have two like female symbols on her t-shirt right above her breasts, things like that. So that seems like a sort of feminist sentiment that is not the main thrust of the film, but just kind of in there to, because you got classism and feminism, and racism is only, you have to infer it, but you throw in their classism, that everybody is oppressed, all the workers are oppressed regardless of race, and women especially, so that not that there isn't a such thing called patriarchy, or sexism, but the real thrust of the film was anti-blackness, but you throw in the other stuff so as to blur the waters so that you can get the green light for the film to be made and distributed. That's how I took it.
Yeah, I hear you. Now this woman is Tessa Thompson. We rated her some time ago,
Did we?
and no, yeah, and nobody nobody said she was black.
Okay.
My score was 155, and you said you agreed with my score. So um,
Interesting. Okay. And so when we say rated, if you're new to this venue, if we haven't rated a person on one of the programs here, and there's a whole playlist where you can go back and look at all the ratings we've done here on this program, um, on this platform. When Kofi and I talk about us having rated someone, we're talking about in a Facebook group in which we develop the algorithm, and it's a secret Facebook group, and it's kind of like this film here. You have to have all kinds of special handshakes and stuff like that to get in. So, um, yeah. Anyway, that's. But we did rate her, and I didn't even recall that Wade rated her. So I'm glad to know that we got it right. Okay, so we've been on her for a little while. Let's move to the next slide. So this was just part of the environment too. I don't remember at what point in the movie this was shown, but you see the image there is really him sitting in the rattan chair. Now, obviously, that's iconic of Huey Newton, right, of the Black Panther, and so it's a rebellious billboard, and it's sort of like a graffiti sort of the counterculture, and it says "Show the world your response, baby." And then at the bottom it says "left eye," which has to do with that mark that you saw underneath her eye. And there was a left eye movement that was against this whole dystopian um, using of people as things, as tools for other people to make profit off of. But that was in the environment, and it's interesting how he used the iconic chair, the sort of that iconic figure of Huey Newton for that. Did you is this bringing any things to mind for you? Any other scenes or anything?
um, just just that uh, what this does is it tells me that anti-blackness was a main push of this movie
Mm-hmm.
because they didn't. Th- there was little reason to put that there to to, to change that into Huey Newton. That's one thing, and uh um yeah yeah that's pretty much. I had something else. It's gonna come back to me. But yeah, pretty much that. That alerted me where the movie was going.
Right on. That's a great, great, great observation. Right. Okay. Oh, so this is just them together. And one of the things I noticed about that I really appreciated was that Cassius Green, the main character, and his friend, um, what was his friend's name? The best friend's name was Salvador. They both wore these "we don't comb our hair." uh, Combing is not part of our height, is not part of our grooming. We don't have to comb our hair to be, these are styles that are not uncommon nowadays, but they're not as common as they should be to me. In film, maybe I don't watch it as much, but I appreciated that both of them had their hair that way. And her name, by the way, which is also key to letting you know that this was about anti-blackness, is that we never learn what her last
Detroit.
name is. Her name is Detroit. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, pretty big. But then, of course, you have the collage of other non-black people in the background to make it a little bit more confused, to make it not quite as clear a focus. And again, they just want to know, do you see? How many people see
Mhm.
it? You know.
Okay. Oh, yeah. So going back to the previous scene, I remember what I was going to say. That Black Panther image showed me that a lot of this movie is talking about anti-blackness, and then there was the point that what was his name? What was Lakeith's name in the movie?
Cassius Green.
Cassius. That Cassius was the person that they took to break up the union.
Yep.
They made him use his, they
But
they took him.
we're
He
gonna
was
get
the
there.
weird. Okay, okay, okay. So I'll hold back what I'm going to say then.
But I think we're gonna get there, and if we don't, I'm sure you'll
Yeah,
remember.
yeah, I will. I will.
Okay. All right. So then we'll go to this one. I love this one because this is also setting the background. All of these are pictures of the background in which it's the setting of the movie. Okay. So as he's driving around, these are his former high school classmates, and he would just always see these guys who were probably in their late 20s, early 30s, who gridiron stars, football stars in high school. But that's all they ever do is just stand and huddle and pretend like they're playing football, or that they're just stuck there. That's all. That's all. And that's a statement about how I wouldn't even call it a glass ceiling. It's a lead ceiling for Black people. We have all these dreams, and again, this was alluded to with the program that Tam I Am and I did last week about the broken dreams and financial illusions. Where you think the only way out is to be an employee for some billionaire as a millionaire basketball player, or big dreams of making it as a rapper or something. But besides that, what is there? There's just this lead ceiling of what can you do? I mean, you can be and even today, this is why I don't think it's that dystopian, because where you find Black people mostly making living is in the most menial things. But you find us way overrepresented in the jobs that don't have guaranteed income and that are very stressful, like telemarketing. I mean, that's today. That's not like in the future. That's right now. Or in sales positions on commission, selling funeral plots, or things that are very hard to sell. And other than that, what is there to do? And if we're going to have any sort of self-esteem, we got to hang on to past glories. What is there to do? So I don't know did you have any more thoughts on this or any other related scenes?
Yeah, sure. For a movie to be a dystopia, it has to be different. It has to be worse than reality for you.
Far less worse than reality. Like, it's I'm always talking about continuums. You know what I mean? Like, to me, it has to be, if I'm going to quantify it, it has to be at least 70%
Okay.
different than how
Now,
the world is today.
Now, we live in a dystopia right now. So wouldn't a movie that discusses regular reality be a dystopia?
Well, you know what? You should look up the definition of dystopia.
Okay.
So let's do that, because I think dystopia is not just something horrible.
The opposite of utopia.
Well, yes. Oh, you're absolutely right. It is the opposite of utopia. But let's see, dystopia.
An imagined state or society in which there is great suffering or injustice, typically one that is totalitarian or post-apocalyptic. Okay, so
imagined.
An imagined state, yeah. Okay.
So not like right
it
now.
Has to be, yeah, it has to be extra. It has to be a lot extra. Okay, I'm with you.
Okay, all right. Great questions, by the way. I mean, and see, these are the kinds of questions. Sometimes he corrects me, and we correct each other. This is why I'm, I guess I'm a typical female that way. I'm very collaborative. I'm a very collaborative person. I just think the work.
Did you?
Go ahead.
Did you take note of Cassius's uncle's woman and the way she looks?
I didn't. I don't even remember her. Talk to me.
Okay, so let me talk about that quickly then. Okay, so Cassius has a woman. I mean, Cassius's uncle has a woman and children. Okay. And his woman is very muscular.
Oh.
She's very. Alma actually noticed that when we were watching it. The woman is very muscular. His sons are also muscular. One of his sons was like lifting weights above his head while he had a virtual reality machine on his face.
Oh.
So they're very muscular. The uncle is very into Jesus. I don't know why that was, but he has all kind of crucifixes and Jesus imagery all over his house. But the reason for the woman, though, I feel that she's probably taking care of a lot of the bills, a lot of the work in the house. That's why she's so muscular.
Mm.
Um, and the uncle's uh, idea that he might go into worry free tells us about his disposition in the world and what his, because he's saying he's going to go into worry free, that means that maybe he doesn't have too much work prospects in real life, and so maybe he's not paying the bills that much, and his muscular woman is.
Interesting. See, and I like that. And I thought that, not that it's untrue, and I'm not sure at what point I have the slide prepared where I wanted to comment on that. But I'm not disputing that to be the case, but I don't find it inconsistent with what Tam I am and I discussed last week. Oh, it has to do with the white voice. I think we can get there. We can talk about what you just said when we get to the white voice slide, because I do have a slide for that. So, but I mean, I think that it's dead on. I think that's exactly what he meant. Even though I didn't see it, when I look at it again and I see the muscular wife and the muscular children, my reading of what Boots Riley meant and incorporating that into the movie would be exactly what you just described. Exactly. I think that's exactly what his intention is. Exactly. And that was a great catch. Ugh. Um. Ugh. Okay. So do you want to lead off on this one? Because this one was really funny. If you recall what this was.
Go ahead. You go ahead. Lead off on it.
Okay, so this was so Cassius Green, he's 4 months behind on his rent, and he interviewed for a job to be a telemarketing marketer at because his friend Salvador had given him a lead. So he goes in, he interviews to be a telemarketer, and telemarketing is like sales. I mean, they've been saying for years, forgive my cursing, but this is really what they say. Hire them in the masses, get them in the classes. If they don't work out, fire their asses. In other words, anybody can have that job because it's so stressful and so difficult to make money at it. So Cash just interviews and he gets the job. Okay, it really didn't matter. So he was just willing to go in there and he could read, and they say stick to the script. So at some point very early on in his tenure in this job at Regal View as a telemarketer, he goes into some like a pep rally sort of, training thing. And so here's this white woman who is a manager, a supervisor, a trainer, and she announces that she's new. In other words, she's never been a telemarketer. This is real life, where the people who get hired to supervise black people and just get hired straight in at the higher salary without having to do the hard work are non-black people. They don't have they don't know anything about.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, that's where she was, and I've seen this over and over again. This is real life. This to me is not dystopia. This is not imagined, because dystopia is imagined, but this is real. So I mean, I have seen this in my own life. So this is okay. And then she announces her name, right? So she says stick to the script, and the script is not really if you've ever been a telemarketer, and I have been I think I did it for 2 weeks. They actually have like a word by word script. But this is more like a scaffold. It's not an actual script word by word. Introduce yourself, be their friend, get your foot in the door quick, build a bridge and connect with them, and make the product seem suited to them. And then but as she announces herself, she writes her name up on the board, and she says, "My name is Diana Dubo Cherry." And Cassius says, "Oh," it was either Cassius or his friend Salvador. He said, "Oh, that looks like debauchery." She said, "Well, it's not. It's Dubo Cherry." But
yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I remember that.
Again, very clever play on words as someone who is a rapper. And debauchery, I hope this is the next slide, is defined as, there we go, excessive indulgence in sensual pleasures, but usually the way we think about it is the synonyms. The synonyms of, especially the ones in purple, degeneracy, corruption, vice, depravity, wickedness, impurity, impropriety, immorality, decadence, indulgence, hedonism. So she just is announcing, basically, because she's an emblem for the. So that's what debauchery means, and it's, she's an emblem of what this company stands for. And if you happen to think you see that that's what the company stands for, as either Salvador or Cassius points out, that looks like debauchery to me. She says, well, no, you're mistaken. You don't actually see what you're looking at. I think that's what Boots was trying to say. Is they're always, as Neely Fuller would say, words can be used in such a way that you don't actually even see what you're looking at. In fact, there is anthropological evidence, that, or there seems to be, there's some testimony that if people don't have a word to describe a thing, they don't actually see it. Some people actually say that that's why, that there was a period of time when, I don't know if this is true, but there was a period of time in which Native Americans, however you want to describe their phenotype, didn't actually see the European ships coming, which I have a hard time believing, because I believe that when I didn't understand that we were using ships. But there are many things that, unless you have a word to describe it, you don't see it for what it is. Or they'll give you another word for something, and it won't really be descriptive, and so it shapes what you see. You think you see something that you don't see just based on the word. And I think that maybe that's what he was trying to say. And I'm trying to think of some examples, and maybe some come to mind for you, but I can't think of any right now. Do any come to mind for you?
No, I can't think of any at this right now. Can you go back to the Native American point? You said that they didn't. Some people say they didn't see the ships, and you don't believe that. Only if they weren't using ships at the time, that would make sense
to me. Yeah, I mean, it's like they're like all these big European sail ships came, and they've been the narrative was that these Native Americans had been living by themselves, isolated all that time, living the way that they lived, and they may have had canoes, what have you. But here come these big European sail ships; they'd never seen anything like that, and since they'd never seen anything like that, they didn't even see them coming, because they didn't know what it was.
Right, they might have thought it was an animal or a cloud or something like that. I actually saw maybe a movie or something like that when they actually articulated that through the film, that it kind of just looked like clouds. So even when it got close, it still didn't make sense. Maybe something on your body, like something unhealthy on your body. If you don't know what it is, and you won't notice it.
Oh, that's good.
That could be an example.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. Like if you don't have a name for what it is, you don't even notice it. Right? Exactly. Like maybe even, I don't know, so many things, bunions or any number of things. Unless you have a name for it, it's like it just doesn't even exist. Yeah, well, even
bunions is a great example, because they grow so slowly. You don't notice them. You just, my foot has always looked like that. But yeah, perfect example.
Yeah, and in terms of race, I think even the term anti-blackness, and I'm not sure who coined that, but I think before anti-blackness, I don't think people could see it. I think all they could say is racism. I think their idea of what racism was something that was practiced only by white folks, European folks, and against anybody who wasn't white. And until that term anti-blackness came into focus, were we able to see it for what it was, what racism really was.
Yeah, that's perfect. And if you don't know the races of humanity, if you don't know that there's two races, then everything looks a lot more confusing. Everybody who's not white looks like victims of racism, victims of white racism. But once you've articulated in your head that there are two races, then all of the groups start to form a circle around black people. And you start to see it a lot better. You look at the LA riots and you see the Koreans shooting us, or you look at the fact that all of these Chinatowns around around this country aren't being gentrified at the same level as every single black neighborhood in every single city, and you start to realize things a little bit differently. So yeah, if you're still of the idea that there's countless races on Earth, then you don't see the anti-blackness, the big ship of anti-blackness coming on your shore, or unloading on your shore, leaving and coming back again.
Right. Or if you still think that that racism equates to white supremacy in the way that white just means European, then you're always contorting your mind to see that these other people are victims just like you.
Right. Today, when I see non-black people say POC, now when I see that, I see them as trying to confuse me more, trying to confuse black people more, trying to act like we're our team, when in actuality they're openly intellectually breaking breaking our defenses,
right.
Breaking through our defenses intellectually. They're openly doing it. Every time they use the word people of color to refer to us or us and other groups together, they're openly attacking us intellectually. But if you don't have that racial dynamic going on, you don't see it, or you start using people of color, right, thinking everything is cool.
Right. And so the term the term people of color becomes a term that keeps you from seeing what you're looking at. So I think this is what Boots was saying. And again, I just thought it was just stultifying, just amazing that he identified the hybrid woman. What's her name? Tessa Thompson as not being a black person. It was just along with the Italians, that was astounding. But what's even more astounding to me is that it's not really astounding, but more extremely interesting that he was allowed to put that in the film. Because apparently there's still a great number of people that they being the people who practice anti-blackness, they wager that a lot of black people just don't see that, or they wouldn't have allowed him to put it in the film. They wager that, and they're just testing. Well, let's see if we're right. Let's see how many still are buying that old people of color thing, So they let him put it in there. Really interesting. I wonder what kind of career in film making he's going to have. Is this going to be it? And when I compare this film, it's probably too early to say this, but when I compare this to Get Out, or even Us was deeper than Get Out. But when I compare it to Us, when I compare it to, what's the one that's just come out, When They See Us, and those type of things, the Jordan Peele films, or the Black Klansman, which I have not seen, but I know that surface level of analysis. It's so frustrating. It's so sad to me that that's the stuff that people gravitate towards as being, when I see people, I mean black people, gravitate as being
deep and profound.
Deep and profound. And I think that really the reason that Get Out was such a hit had more to do with the sexuality part of it. It had more to do. Yeah, go ahead.
I think it also had to do with the violence against white people, the anti-white violence, because that anti-white violence coupled with black victory rarely happens in movies. So I think that was also a big point of
okay. Okay, you schooling me. Okay, true that. The Django had that too,
Okay. I didn't see Django, and I didn't see Black Klansman, so I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't seen Black Klansman either, but I'll have to see it. Okay, so this was the part where I could see where people were saying, okay, this is getting too weird for me. I'm out. I mean, I don't get it. This is that weird end stuff, okay? And it's part of the debauchery, right? This is immoral, but see, when when a telemarketer, we don't do this anymore, right? Telemarketing doesn't really work anymore because people just don't pick up numbers that they don't recognize. But before that happened, this is what telemarketing was like. You could catch people in the middle of just about anything, and probably this. So this is an artistic take on that, where he actually plops right in the middle of the room of the person who he's contacted to try to make a sale. And so here are two white people in the act of coitus, in the act of sex. And then you see a can of Coke on the table. You don't know the significance of that until later, but that's there for a reason. And so as you can see that this black man has put this stuff, all these little details in the film there for a reason. It will hopefully help people recognize that when they go to films that are directed and written by white folks, that they're doing the exact same thing, but they're doing it for anti-black purposes. There's very little is in a film just happens to be there. They take great pains to make sure that the details are in concert with the message that they're trying to portray, and actually make amusing to non-black people at our expense. But this is where we get to see it flipped, and I've never seen a black film, a black writer be able to flip it and do it the way white people do it. It's just amazing to me. But yeah, here he is in their bedroom, and it's debauchery. I can speak to this, or you can. I didn't know if you had anything else you wanted to say about this one.
Well, going back to the weird stuff, I didn't find that off-putting. I found it actually decent because it was kind of showing us, those of us who haven't been in the telemarketing world, kind of what he had to deal with as a telemarketer. I thought it was actually cool imagery, but I obviously I'm one of those weird ends, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's not gonna. I'm like, personally, I don't like sex in movies, and I was happy that this movie minimized it. Like, there was no real sex scenes between Tessa and Lakeith. Right. They showed a little bit, and then they always shifted to afterwards. I was so happy with that. And the scenes where somebody was having sex because of the telemarketing, or because of they were at some sex party or something. I felt like it was I felt like it was useful. So right. when I see people saying that the movie was too weird for them, I don't quite understand that. It was a very artistic movie. Like it wasn't a straightforward action film where everything is realistic. It was a lot of art behind the scenes, which for me it worked.
Right. It worked for me too, and I think that was part of the whole Left Eye theme. You remember in the '90s there was the oh my God, what was the name of the company that did it? Do you remember? Where it was a 2D image. It didn't look like anything, and if you looked at it the right way, it popped out as a three-dimensional image.
I don't know what company did that, but I never got those.
Magic Eye.
Okay.
And so
I never saw what was supposed to be seen in those images.
That's interesting. That's it.
Of course, I was very young too in the '90s, so that could be part of it as well.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I was not very young. I was in my early 30s, and I had kids in my class who could immediately see them. It was extremely difficult for me to see it. I had to buy a book, and I remember staying up all night once. Because they said, well, if you have a really hard time doing it, then what you do is you look at it, you hold it up to your nose, like really close, and you move
it away slowly.
Yeah. And then I was able to do it, but not every single time. So but I wanted to get through the whole book and do it, and I spent like 9 hours straight trying to do it. And then it would disappear on me. And I think like this movie is saying, it's almost it gets to another scene that has to do with the way that it's going to be correlated with the whole blue dress, gold dress thing, that there are ways that we sense things that are probably different than the way non-black people sense things. We see colors differently.
Mm.
And so the whole left eye thing is, if you use your left eye and you don't use your right eye, but that's almost, and that's kind of a metaphor too, because usually left is like out of left field. It's not the conventional thing, that's a saying, out of left field, or your left eye is not your dominant eye, you know what I mean? It's not the eye you, so, but if you use your left eye, you'll see things that you won't see if you just use your right eye, or if you use both of them. There's things that you will see, and maybe this is sort of a kind of a, it's sort of like it sort of combines that whole magic eye 3D thing. You see with your left eye. To me, that's, I don't know if that's what he was getting at, but I think so. It'd be interesting to hear him say. But someone had written either on Facebook or in the YouTube comments that Boots Riley did a review himself of the Black Klansman, and I cannot wait to read that. I cannot wait to see
Did
it.
he take part in Black Klansman? Was he a part of that movie or no?
I don't know. We should look it up. I think that's important. I'm going to look that up. Let's look it up. I doubt it. Let's see. Black Klansman, IMDb.
It doesn't look like it. He just had the critique on it.
So that's
So we'll
interesting.
see about that.
Yeah, because I wouldn't think he would do a critique of something that he I wouldn't think he would do
Yeah.
it. Yeah, if he was in it. And so we'll have to see what his career is like. When Melvin Van Peebles, what, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, did Sweetback's Badass Song. Wasn't that
Mhm.
wasn't that the last film he ever made?
I don't know.
He went blind making it, but yeah, we'll have to see what Boots Riley's career was like. I mean, but for this to be his debut as a director, and I think maybe even a screenwriter, just shows the
Mhm.
genius of black people. This is incredible. Okay, this you're on now, because this has got the Asian guy in it. So I'm gonna let you lead off on this one.
Okay, this scene where him and do you remember what they were talking about at that scene?
I do. This was the very beginning where Cassius hadn't been working there too long, and he went to the area where the vending machines were, and the Asian guy was there waiting for him and to try to help
Yeah,
organize him
yeah,
into the
right.
union.
Oh, okay, and the Asian dude peeps him from far away. He was new to the company, and the Asian guy immediately saw him as a weapon that he can use to build up the union, which that happens. Oh, they always look for one of us to be the front man. It's happened to me as I
Mm-hmm.
was going through college. All non-black people see us and they're like, oh, this could be our spokesperson. He's a black person. He's blah blah blah. So yeah, that I noticed, and he made friends with him. He took him out to drink and all
Right.
of that. Um,
That's
and
that scene right there.
fake friends too, because immediately he started to go after his girl. Um,
That's so
um,
true. Oh my god. Oh yeah, go
yeah,
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
fake friends, and then so in real life he would have been ready to use him until he couldn't use him anymore, and then toss him away. Um, so there's that, and then there's also the sexual aspect that we talked about earlier. Um, but Boots Riley, or the writers of this, they also know about this movement that's happening, trying to make
Mm-hmm.
uh, to improve Asian men's place in the sexual marketplace. They know that's happening, but they didn't go that far. There was no sex scene with him. Tessa told Lakeith that they didn't have sex. They just did everything up to sex,
Right.
whatever that means,
Yeah.
which was also a little odd.
Yeah.
Because the movie usually a woman wouldn't cheat on the man in the movie because it would kind of make the woman seem less good. But this movie didn't have that quality. This movie, she would have cheated, and it would have been, and she still would have been good. This is more of a forward thinking movie where they don't have those same tropes. Like a woman has to stay innocent, she has to stay loyal. Those things weren't in the movie. The reason why they wrote her in going up to the point and not passing it is because I guess because they feel that people aren't quite there to have that black woman, Asian man love yet. Another point: black women and Asian men are being pushed together a lot. I guess because they're the least valued
The least
people.
preferred. The least preferred in
least
each
preferred.
Gender.
Yeah, in each gender, right? I mean, they're the least openly preferred, right? Because black women are probably the most preferred, low key.
Right.
Asian men, I guess they are the least preferred.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Why is that unfortunate?
Well, I mean, because you would like to believe, you want to believe in symmetry, but that's just not, those are one of the things that you don't, don't we all want to believe that everybody can do anything if they just try hard enough? Don't we want to believe? You understand what I'm saying? That everybody's basically exactly the same. It makes things neat. And so when I say unfortunately, it's sloppy, but it's true.
And it's sad. And I feel bad for them sometimes when I see the struggles that the Asian men go through. Their own women, they have trouble with their own women and other people's women. I imagine that's a struggle. And I guess that's my black empathy. I shouldn't care. I should, but it's
I don't know. I mean, it could be your black empathy. But as we've spoken about before, I mean, empathy is a mammalian trait. It's not even just a human trait. It's a mammalian trait. So, and now of Homo sapiens, do black people have more of that than other people? Yeah, to our great disadvantage.
Yeah, but no, it's a mammalian and human trait. But when it comes to black people, it's only a one-way street.
Yeah.
So so that being the case, I shouldn't logically care. I should use that for some purpose instead of being disarmed in my empathy for them. There's this one page on Facebook called Love Life of an Asian Guy that I follow, and he's one of those people who he's an Asian. He says people of color all the time.
Yeah. I know about his page. Yeah.
Okay. And he's married or fiance to a black woman. And he's always posting history about Asian male struggles, particularly dealing with sexuality. And constantly though, he tries to be that forward-thinking Asian that doesn't practice anti-blackness, but it still happens, and it particularly happens in the comments from the Asians on his page. I'm also a part of another group for parents, Love Life of an Asian Guy fans parenting group, where most of the people in that group are black people, but most of the black people are in relationships with non-black people. It's a really wild group. So I say that to say that black women are getting pushed to Asian men. And there's a whole bunch of it going on, kind of low key, that this movie seemed to be aware of.
Yeah, for sure. Because even there's going to be an image sort of an iconic image of this film that has like an Asian sort of feel to it, but I'll wait till we get there. Um, yeah, this goes along with what I had said about not being polite. Um, I think that I think the reason that Asian men are least preferred in reality is on two counts. Unfortunately, it's their height, because if they're tall, it's not an issue. Um, it is their height, and then what is said to be, and what I have observed as somebody, because I've done so many jobs. Um, when I was a special education teacher, I used to have to take care of the toileting needs. God, this is graphic, isn't it? Of little boys. Um, they're like, I can't remember, somewhere between 7 and 10 years old. And just from the little boys, now, all I can say is about the little boys, because I saw
Mhm.
Asian little boys, white little boys, and black little boys. What people are saying as stereotypes are true.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Across the board, like is it? So
Oh, I'm sure there are
wow.
exceptions, but I'm just saying in the aggregate, that's what I saw.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Ah, interesting.
And
But the height thing is, does that matter? Because because you know
to a
in the other
certain,
groups,
to
in
a,
Mexicans, they're short and they don't. I don't think they have that issue.
you're right. But uh, they aren't as short. See, like there's like a tipping point. For sure, there are really short Hispanics, Mexicans especially. For sure,
Hmm.
there are, um, but their median height is at a level that is that tipping point. It's not They're not so short that it's a disadvantage. I mean,
Mm.
I think most women can deal with a man who's 5'7",
Mm.
5'8", but it's not unusual for Asians to be like their average height to be like 5'6", 5'5".
Mm. Didn't
Um,
know that. Okay.
yeah. So I think that in combination with the phallic issue um, might be a problem. So the Afro-Asiatic might be might be something. And also, Tamayam said that for the first time, what she's seeing is that the Asian women, it they were getting breast implants for a while. But I had read an article a few years back where their aesthetic was not to have big. Uh, they didn't want to augment their hips or their butt. And so
Hmm.
then a while back they started augmenting their butt, and only recently have they've also started augmenting their hips.
I've noticed it in New York. I've noticed the Asian women looking different in their bottom region. So yeah, and this is a new thing too, because it's like miraculous that before I knew that they always looked one way, and now I'm starting to see a lot more curves, and it's just it's still hard for me to believe that people are going to surgeons to do
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
but yeah, apparently it's happening, unless they're doing some kind of workouts that.
No, I mean, I'm sorry, I just don't buy that. I've seen the
Yeah,
CrossFit movement. I do
yeah.
know that they can pick up bulk in their thigh area, and they can lift it. They can get a little bit of bulk in their butt, but not enough to where it would be that pronounced. No, I'm not
Right, right.
women, because women just generally can't gain that much bulk, and it just doesn't change the overall physical shape. No, I mean, this is clearly
Mm.
something that they're doing. Not to that extent. This is there's no workout that can make a difference like that. Um, Now, I mean, if you have some basics, there. So yourself. There's a so same thing with women. We're kind of getting off the track here, but a lot of people want to hear about sex, so we might as well talk about it. Um, there are guys who are wiry, and they have the basics of a muscular build, but they just don't have any bulk. And then,
Hmm.
if they get in the gym, they fill that out. But they already had the basics for that. So I think that that's true for some, some black women. The basics are there, but and maybe they've gotten a little bit older, a little bit flabbier. But if they get back in the gym and tighten things up, things will lift up, and you get to see the figure. But if you don't have the basic apparatus for it, no, you're not going to get that by working out. No, that's definitely
Hmm. Hmm.
surgery. Um, yeah, it makes me. I wish that weren't true for them, but I'm going to tell you the truth because I don't find them to be. Here's the thing. I don't. I don't. I think most, and I've talked to lots of women about this. Um, I don't find Asian men to be in their manner less masculine than um, white men.
Okay. Yeah.
Not Northeast Asians. So it's not that now they're
Northeast Asians meaning Korean, Chinese, them types.
right.
Okay.
Now, do I want to say what I want to say next? Do I want to say it? Have I? Am I already? I'm already on probation. I better not say it. I'm not going to say the rest. I'm going on to the next slide.
Okay.
Um. Okay, so here again we see signs. Like why signs? And then the store is signs, but look what direction. If you're not the camera view, but if you're in real life, what direction? In other words, if you're holding that sign, what direction is that?
Well, it's the West,
Oh my God, you're
right?
you're such a man. You know like directions. How in the world would you know that's west? All I know is that it's left. How do you know that's
Okay.
west?
Because no, if it was a map I'm looking at, it's well, actually it's east. If it was a map I'm looking at,
Okay.
uh, well, it's evening. It's evening, and the sun's over there. But that doesn't matter.
No, it
Um,
does matter. See, these are the difference between the male brain and the female brain. I most
you see the
most women.
shadow. You see the shadow going that way, so the sun is over there, and the sun goes down in the. And I remember this scene. It was close to night, so you know.
Well, you're right. You're that. See, there's the male brain. I like so. Yeah, males are superior at certain things. Okay. But you wouldn't disagree that she's holding it. She's holding it to her left. You wouldn't disagree with that, right?
No.
Okay. Um,
Excuse me.
and here he is. Oops, no, that's not the one. I don't want to go through all the rest of them. I wanted to show the one where he was breakdancing.
That was
Oh.
it. That was it. He was breakdancing there on the scene with what you had.
I know, but I don't have the film. I don't think I have it uploaded. But yeah,
Uh,
we're just gonna have to tell. We're gonna have to take people. I don't want to go and look for it, but yeah, you want to describe the scene where what he did
yeah. So he met her. He met Tessa
at that corner.
uh, at that corner when she was working. And this is another point that I was making about there's no job. You see those stores? There's no people on the street. Those stores are closed, and that's a signs store.
Hmm.
So she doesn't have a job really. She's just struggling along to pay for her art. But yeah, he came to discuss the rebellion that they're building, and he came to, I think, talk about Cassius and how he's not living up to his potential, and to try to get her to come home with him. And this was early on. This was early on, like back before Cassius had really backstabbed them fully.
Oh yeah, he went looking
Um,
for her for sure.
yeah, for sure. So he was obviously using Cassius, which that's life. It's fine, but we generally don't expect people to treat us like that. We would expect that he's trying to be our friend and work with us, but nah, he's just all business, you know. And yeah, yeah, that's pretty much what I remember from that scene.
Wow. Okay. But you didn't talk about how he showed up with the sign and tried to impress her by breakdancing with it.
Yeah, she said that, yeah, he took the sign from her, and she behaved as if he didn't know what he was doing, and he apparently he had sold signs for the sign store historically because he was flipping that sign around. He did the head spin. He was definitely going in, trying to impress her. Obviously, trying to impress her with his fluence in black culture,
Right.
with with fluency in black culture. So now that then tells me that she's considered a black person. Then
Well, not necessarily. Not necessarily
okay,
because hip hop is no longer. I don't even. I think so many people now don't consider it the exclusive province of black people. I think, but it can be used as currency of masculinity. So there are white rappers or Hispanic rappers and so on, but it can be
you
used because
you said
she.
hip hop is not considered the exclusive what of black people.
It's not the exclusive cultural terrain of black people anymore. It's been taken over. No, everybody does hip hop.
It's like a colonized.
Yeah, it's
It's
been
like a black,
colonized. Hmm.
but it's still black though. It's still considered black by everyone. Just like Jamaica
Yeah.
was a British colony, but still black. It's still no.
Well, I mean, yes. I mean, I think there's some difference. I'm trying to think what the nuance is. Trying to think what the.
People people say that hip hop is not black and it's for everyone. People say that, especially non-black people, but I don't think anybody really believes that yet.
I think younger people do. I think people
Younger
younger.
people.
I think younger people younger than you do. Um,
What do they think it is if it's not black?
well, what I was going to say, and hopefully this answers it, although not directly. It seems
Hmm.
like it is in that transition in the same way that rock and roll went. Rock and roll used to be a black art form. Everybody thought of it as an art black form back in Chuck
Yeah, I
Berry's
agree
day,
with you.
right? And then it slowly shifted until it became an anybody thing, and now it's a totally white thing. Um,
Right, right. I agree, but where I draw the line is that I don't think it's at the stage of anybody yet. It's just it's,
no, I think it's
it's
in that. I think it's in that gray zone where
between anybody and black.
yes, yes, between
Okay,
anybody and
okay,
black. And so that yeah, people remember that it came from black, that it's predominantly black, but it's not the exclusive province of. But because it still has its it still has a foot anchored in blackness, it can be used as currency to show masculinity because it's
sure.
associated with the black male. That's kind of what I thought.
Hmm.
That's what I think when I see non-black males really getting into to raps. Like it's we can do this if we want to, and um, it also shows how masculine we are. To me,
Yeah.
maybe I'm wrong in saying this, but I consider rap to be a pretty masculine art form, and it's not that it could be a more feminine art form, but the way that it's gone, it's not. And it's interesting because women are better at words, so it's interesting to me that it's gone the way that it's gone as a masculine art
Hmm.
form. But
Yeah, even before it was capitalized to the extent that it is in the mid '80s, it was still mostly masculine.
mm-hmm.
Battle rap, most of the stars were men. Yeah, I find that to be the case, and even the women who
Yes,
are in hip hop today and previously are they, they they play a masculinized feminine role, even if they're hypersexual. They're
yes,
still a masculine hypersexual.
I agree.
It's weird.
I agree. And even like some of the women who are rap stars today who are black-ish or even black, um, their demeanor is feminine, but still the way they go about the art form is masculine. But in the 90s, the female rap stars were actually kind of masculine in their demeanor. So,
Hmm.
yeah, I don't really get why that is, but I really don't because scientifically we know women are better at words. So I'm not sure what that's about. I don't know.
Were women less feminine in dress in the '90s? My memory of the '90s paints women as less feminine
Oh,
in that they
absolutely.
wore a lot of baggy clothes,
Yeah,
wore a lot of kind of masculine hairstyles.
I agree. Yeah, they were. I think they were.
Hmm.
Oh, so,
So,
okay. So, so this is a company called Worry Free, and so
mm,
throughout the movie you see TV ads and billboard ads for this company called Worry Free, trying to recruit people to going to work for this company called Worry Free, where you don't have to worry about it. You have lifetime contracts. Ahem.
free
Guaranteed.
room and board.
Yeah. And, you know, if that isn't slavery, what is it? And again, when I started the program saying I feel like I'm giving you all I got, in doing this, because this is what I have been saying I think was the primary condition of slavery for black people in the Americas, just at a much lower tech, where your ability to make use of resources were completely stripped from you.
Mm,
So that you were coerced into these supposedly employment contracts, and they got to be and more restrictive to the point where it was slavery. But it couldn't have been the well, as I've said, I don't believe it could have been the constant um, lashes. And I don't even they weren't in the dormitory conditions like this, but um, so this part is like more dystopian to me. But the constant having to see people strung up in trees as punishment, and feet cut off and all that kind of stuff under constant terror. Like I said, I don't think we could have procreated under those conditions. So I think it had to be something more like coerced into an employment contract. And later, I mean, I had not even see. This is why I say, even though I disagree with people, I try. It's a good idea to try to listen to a little bit of everything. Um, Later, I found out, maybe it was a couple weeks ago, that a guy who I disagree with in terms of how he characterizes black Native Americans, because he uses pictures that I don't consider black people. But anyway, this is what he says the Emancipation Proclamation was all about, and he makes a pretty good case for it. That it was really Abraham Lincoln, the president, mediating a labor dispute where the black people, said, we had this was supposed to be employment, but we're getting nothing out of this. So they went on strike, and so
wow,
hmm?
I've never heard that. I've never heard that, and I would love to. Maybe you can tag me in whatever it was that
Okay.
this person made a good case in. That's a very interesting idea that I haven't come across.
And I'd always heard about it as the Emancipation Proclamation, but I believe it's called Proclamation 95. And in it is no reference to color or race. And in it is again those two terms, involuntary servitude and slavery. And he exhorts that stop, and that the the people who are in involuntary servitude, because you see you can get coerced into it, just like these lifetime contracts up here. You could get coerced into it, and what he's saying is, no, once that coercion stops, I implore you to go ahead and work for fair wages. And if you just read that on its face without bias, it might not be true, but if you were to take it at face value, it would be saying exactly that. The question is, can it be taken at face value like that? To me, it's a pretty strong case, because the continued use of both terms, usually when you're doing governmental writing, when you're doing legislative writing, you're not redundant with terms. So you don't say you don't say, um, in other words, he used the two terms involuntary servitude and slavery. That is done for literary purposes, but usually for in legislative writing or that kind of governmental edict type thing, you're not redundant. So you don't say things like, um, you don't say things like 5 years for breaking in with a gun and armed robbery, because they're the same
Mm.
thing. So
Did the Emancipation Proclamation say uh, involuntary servitude and slavery? Did it say something redundant like that?
I am 90% sure. I should look.
Okay.
Should we look now or later?
Where was it in the?
You can find it. You just put in
No,
Proclamation
no.
'95.
I mean. Oh, Proclamation '95. Yeah, I see it here. Yeah,
Okay.
but it's pretty long.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty long and it's in cursive. But yeah, I
Hmm.
think both terms are used, and you do realize that both terms are used in the 13th Amendment. Both terms are
Mm.
used. So very interesting.
What
Uh,
is the point? What's the point of mentioning the redundancy? Okay, so it's
I don't
not
think
used
it's
in
redundant.
government terms.
Yeah, I don't think it's redundant. I think there were two different forms of. See, that's why I said the definition of slavery, like we see here in this example right here, and this I think may be what Boots Riley was trying to say, because also you gonna there he has some Mayan art that he has in Cassius Green's apartment. I don't know if you noticed that. So he may have some awareness of that of the two types of black people on this land too. But what I'm saying is I don't think it I I suspect that it's not redundant. I suspect that there were two different types and they were moving closer and closer together. And as they
Mm,
moved closer together, that was what caused the problem. That's what caused the
that could be.
strife. Yeah.
Um, there's also the fact that there was there was the I don't remember what people usually say. Oh, the Irish were
That stopped
some
in the
kind of
1600s. That stopped. That's the thing. I looked that up. That stopped in the mid
okay.
1600s. So now we're
Okay,
so we know they weren't talking about white people. So now you
good,
got
good.
white. Now we're talking about black people, and you're talking about involuntary servitude and slavery. It's hard for me to believe that those were just used as redundant terms. Why would they do that? I
Mm,
don't see that in any other form of government writing.
right. And going back to what you said about Boots Riley knowing about the American black people, I'm I'm sure that people in his position know that there are black people today who say that because right today there's two groups of black people,
Right.
ones that say we're from Africa and ones that say we're from America, and it's not even like a quiet thing. It's a very vocal thing that there are a significant portion of black people who claim American identity, historical ancient American identity. So, it wouldn't be surprising if he put something like that in the movie.
It wouldn't be surprising. And it's a really critical point. It's really critical because, as I had said when I did the video that I did on, are you an indigenous American or are you a descendant of slavery, and you really could, or both. It's critical because I think the point he's trying to make, and the point I was trying to make, is that we haven't changed. Nothing's changed. We've been barely making ends meet and working in
Hmm.
servitude in a way that we call employment
Yeah.
since the beginning of this thing over here.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's important for us to know that we've not really made any progress so that we can drastically change our tactics, because I think
Mm.
people think that we've progressed. But if this is how it's been for 400 years, aside from the slavery, because there was slavery, and then there was this type of thing, which was a
Hmm.
form of slavery, the involuntary servitude, that you were coerced into, less by physical violence, but by taking away your means to support yourself.
Yeah.
If that's what we've been doing, oh my God, they've been really good at this for 400 years, making us think that we're just marching around in circles, Kofi. We haven't done anything
Yeah.
different.
That's terrible. Do you think that? Okay, so you say that we've been marching around in circles doing this same involuntary servitude or voluntary servitude or voluntary slavery, the same thing we've been doing forever. Is that much different than the other groups in America, the other ethnic groups in America? Can you and if so, can you give me some examples of people who live in America? but aren't just eking out a living, um, you know,
Well, he's
the same way we are.
well. I mean, one of the things that Cassius Green says, he asked the same question because his girlfriend Detroit says she's talking about this worry-free contract that's showing up here. She's saying, Cassius, it's slavery. They're having pillow talk, and he rolls over her and looks at her and says, "What isn't slavery?" So here we go
Yeah,
again.
I remember that.
So here we go again with the continuum. Now, this is the point where Neely Fuller makes the point about racial showcasing, and it goes both ways. What's it? Racial sacrifice. So sure, there are a number of white people, and probably a greater number of them now. Certainly a greater number of them now than say 20 years ago, 30 years ago, who are barely eking out a living. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
times are bad. Of course, there was the recession. I'm sorry, the depression in the 1920s. There are going
Mm-hmm.
to be periods of time in which all kinds of white people are barely eking out a living. But if you take a broader view of history and you look at the aggregate overall, how are white people doing over time or at a specific time? Are non-black people, not just white people, take a given point in time or take it over a span of time? Overall, no, that is not their predominant condition, whereas it is the predominant condition of black people at any given time or over a span of time.
Hmm. What kind of work are non-black people doing today that black people aren't doing that allows them to do more than just eke out a living that we're doing? Can you give maybe one or two examples? Because I can't think of any. I feel like um, they might be eking out a little bit more of a living than we are, but
But Kofi, come on, look at the stats. Look at the income. I mean, the stats are there for everybody to see what the average
mhm,
income is of a
mhm.
non-black person versus a
Everybody
white
else,
person.
yeah.
So we know they're making more money. Now, what is it that they're doing? The census takes a pretty good track of that in terms of the kinds of jobs that people are doing by race. I did a program on it about 8 or 9 years ago, but they are at the higher levels of
Hmm.
office management,
Right, right.
the professions. Just like this white woman came in the movie, and she didn't have to move up through the ranks as being a telemarketer. She just came in as a trainer. So they're that
Hmm.
type of thing. They're trainers. They're management.
Yeah.
They come in to tell us what to do. They come in at a higher level. They're at high skill level trades. They get paid
And they
very
have high mobility.
and they have high mobility. Yes, they get paid to learn. They are not surveilled. There's a study on that they
They're
aren't
not surveilled. That's a big one.
they're
Okay.
they're not surveilled on the job as much, so they're not caught doing. Anybody who starts a
Yep.
new job is going to make mistakes, but
Yes.
black people make mistakes as they're learning, and you get fired because they're always being
Or they're
monitored.
or they're allowed to break the rules
Yep,
to jump ahead of the competition, whereas we can't break any rules.
any rules.
Okay, so yeah, so I'm with you. They're living a whole different reality than we're living.
Whole different reality. I've seen them make new I mean, black people who've been around for a while. You'll be at a job and you'll be kicking butt. I mean, you're good at what you do, and you might be around other black people who are good at what they do. Um, that's uncomfortable for white people, and so when that happens, and I've experienced that, been on these jobs. They make new jobs. They just will make a new job, and they won't post. It's not open for uh, um, interview. All of a sudden,
Right.
it'll just be announced that this person has this new job in the
Yeah.
company, and it makes 3 times as much as what you make. I mean, they live an entirely different existence. You have to know that just by looking at, and then on top of that, they have wealth. So there's the income problem and the wealth problem. So even when they're poor, it's not the same kind of poor. So
Hmm.
they don't live around a bunch of other poor people, and they have their parents' wealth. These millennials, yeah, they're not. Even the millennials are having a really hard time. We have the data on that their parents are supplementing their income.
Mhm. Mhm.
Whereas it's the other way around, right? So even in this film, you find that Cassius Green, when he starts moving up, when he gets chosen, you know, and he gets some money, he's helping out his uncle, the other generation.
Yeah.
So
The whole family. Yeah.
yeah, so um,
And who knows who else? That's actually something Amma and me has talked about a lot. That it's tough for Black people when we start to make any kind of success that automatically everyone else in our family
mm-hmm,
we can either A, help them, or B, get just not be around them.
right,
And and that's not the case for other groups,
right,
because everybody's going to be having these emergencies that
yep,
you can either A, save them from, and then if you save them from it, you're pushing yourself,
right,
your own development back.
right, yep.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's true. And there doesn't seem to be any middle ground. So I know Neely Fuller said, who's not a black person, but he said, if you have an extra room in your house, don't feel like you have to fill it with furniture because somebody in your family is going to need to live there. Um,
So,
and I get that, but that's a middle ground because once you do that, then the next thing, the hands being stuck out. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's hard because what it is a shipwreck. It's Leonardo DiCaprio. What was the film? Um,
Titanic.
yeah, Titanic. Everybody's floating around on a piece of wreckage, and they're trying to keep from drowning. If they come near you, if you've got a bigger piece of wreckage, everybody wants to latch onto yours. Now you go down. I mean, it's just
Right.
yeah,
And that is a perfect articulation of Black life. Everybody's in a wreckage, and if you just happen to get something a little bit better than everybody else, everybody crowds around you. Yes, everybody in your family, all your friends' families, all crowd around you, and you can either A, push them away, or B, be a Black person with empathy and try to help them, and
or
now you're back
C,
with them.
or C. So
What's that? What's C?
C is you just don't let them know.
Yeah,
And you have
yeah.
to be very careful about it, and people sometimes and like people want to it's a normal human thing to want to share your good fortune,
Successes,
hmm
yeah.
with people, especially people that you care about and you think care about you. um, and sometimes it's just a normal human thing to just want to share it with anybody. You see people doing that on Facebook. Not a good idea. Not a good idea. I mean, even
Yeah.
even my family gathering that I went to a couple weeks ago, I was asked, "Yeah, what are you doing?" You know what I told them? A
What
little
you
bit
telling?
of this and a little bit of that. Totally serious, and that was the end of that.
Mm.
Okay, so here, um, they make it. The Asian guy convinces uh, Cash and all the other telemarketers at Regal View to to strike as a means of union organizing. And this is a graphic of this on TV. The television news is covering this this strike, and they're saying phones down. And at this point, Cassius is like he's down with them. He's down with the strike, right?
Mm.
Um, anything else that
Well, that's after that's after things have kind of hit the fan,
really?
and he's is this before he went upstairs?
Yes, this is before he went
Oh,
upstairs.
okay, okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
this is before he went upstairs. This is a little earlier, so this is a little bit out of sequence, but I thought it was important because this goes to what we were discussing. So this is a newspaper article. Remember, this is taking place in the city of Oakland, California, and Oakland is was traditionally the blackest city in the state of California.
Oakland. Okay, I didn't peep that.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, And so the headline says Senate committee clears worry free of slavery charges. And I believe it was the Asian guy who he plunked that down on the table when he walked into that bar when they were discussing unionizing. But
Mhm.
yeah, and so they were cleared of the charges, which is gonna lead into because I don't think that I have a graphic for it, but I hope we get into it. Because remind me if you don't bring it up yourself. Remember that, and I don't want to spoil it for right now, but there was a statement being made about how people react to things when.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. You know what I'm talking about, right? Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay, now here comes the weird and lovely stuff. This is oh, I love this. Um yeah, I love it so much that I'm gonna go first. Okay, so this is Omari Hardwick, and he was the good Negro in
Mhm.
this film, and he was um, okay. So he was the good Negro in this film, and so once the strike seemed to be having a high level of success at Regal View, the work stoppage had success almost immediately. This is you might want to speak, but almost immediately. Because why don't you speak to that part? Because I just want to speak to this image. Maybe you want to talk about what happened at the work stoppage and what then happened with Cassius, and then I'll talk about this particular image.
I don't remember what Amari Hadwick had to do with the
No,
work
no, I
stoppage.
remember that part, but maybe you can talk about what happened at the work stoppage and what then happened to Cassius at just up until this point.
Right, right. So he was doing his thing. He learned his white voice, and he was just selling everything. He was a top seller, and he really utilized that white voice, which when I saw that really kind of woke me up a little bit to what the movie was about. Um, uh, he was a black person who was unhappy with how the world was moving around him, and then he finally found his place in and it was to be a subordinate to white people or non-black people. I don't know, just to be a subordinate black person.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when they organized and did the work stoppage, the higher ups immediately swooped in and saw him as the as as the brain or the heart of the movement, and they took him, threw money at him, threw a suit at him, threw a white woman at him in the form of debauchery,
Mm-hmm.
because they threw her at him and put all kind of things in his ear in order to break the movement. And that reminded me of something that you said a while back, Cree, that every once in a while there is turbulence in the system of anti-blackness, and if you're in the right place at the right time during that turbulence, you can get put in a good position.
Mm-hmm.
Just because white folks or non-black folks are giving out bonuses in order to quell the natives,
Right.
so to speak. Um, uh, um, some of the major rappers are examples of that. I think you named your pops as one of the examples of that.
Yep.
And that happening to Cassius was just a great example. A great example. He was making them big money. Everybody was looking up to him, and they took him and they tried to they tried to disarm the movement by putting him up there. And even when he was up there, he was on some. Oh, I'm just gonna keep on working with y'all from the inside, which is just something that black folks always say. I'm gonna change the system from the inside.
Yep.
Um, yeah, that's something that I noticed. And then they moved him up there, and then he became kind of the face of Worry Free. It seemed like he was kind of the face of it, because when they were moving through the crowd, beating folks up, the camera was on him. He was in the middle.
Right.
He started to kind of speak. He started to kind of speak for the company, even to his girlfriend. What are we gonna do? This is just how life is. Let's just enjoy it and keep it moving. And that was just a perfect example of things that have been happening to us.
Perfect
You know,
example. And
yeah.
now Danny Glover, who was speaking at the hearing this week, he played a key role in what you were just talking about because he'd been doing it for a while. And so what up to that a certain point, Cassius had been working there a few weeks or something, and he just wasn't making any headway. He wasn't making any
Hmm.
money. He was getting dispirited. He's getting um and Danny Glover was seated next to him, and he said, "Look here, young blood, use your white voice if you want to make some money." And Cassius said, "What do you mean use my white voice? People already tell me that I don't sound black." And so he said, and so Cassius didn't want to do it, and so Danny Glover said, "Well, I mean, I'm just trying to tell you, if you want to make some money, use your white voice." So then Cassius pinched his nose together and went into a nasal tone. Now this is critical to me. And Danny Glover says, "No, no, no, no. I'm not just talking about that nasally sound. That's not what I'm talking about." Critical. He said, "You want to sound light and breezy, like you don't have to make this sale, like you don't really have any cares in the world, like you're about to leave here and get in your Lamborghini or something like that. That's how you sound white." And that really, like, this is me giving you everything. This close to giving you everything I got, because I don't know, some of the people listening here, I know that just because they tell me, have been following me for years, and they probably heard the radio program I did on an interaction I had with the local grocer. I can say who I didn't want to say who it was at the time, but it was the supermarket closest to where I reside and where a lot of black people shop is called Food for Less, which is a subsidiary of Kroger. And they were mistreating my husband and I. So, because one of the things that this grocer did, of course, was, like a lot of big grocers, they cash checks and employment checks if they're not too big, and employment checks or anything that's, something that has a solid reputation behind it. So definitely government checks. So at the time, we had a government check, or my husband did, and we had cashed it like any number of times, and we'd seen many other people do it. This is going to go to what Danny Glover said about the voice, okay? And so we had our basket full of groceries, and our intent was to do what we had done before, what other people had done, which is to cash the check, pay for the groceries, and then take the balance out. And there was a long line behind us. Um, there was a long line behind us, and that was part of it too, because I got tired of that mistreatment, because this Food for Less is like a no nonsense type grocer where it's just basically nigger shop here, basically, okay? And the word nigger is used
Hmm.
in this film. So because of that, we're gonna have concrete floors. We're not gonna make it look nice for you. They could, but if you went to a Food for Less in another part of town, they would have all kinds of things that the Food for Less in our neighborhood would not have. It would be neater,
Hmm.
cleaner, all that kind of stuff, right? There would be what do you call it? Checker free, checker free. Uh, what do where you can just use a computer and the scanner and all that. They would just have
Self
all,
checkout.
yeah, self checkout. They'd have all kinds of stuff that they didn't have at ours, and you never had to wait long. If ever what I would go to a Food for Less, whether it was in an all Mexican area or an all white area. Um, there were never long lines, but in our neighborhood, there'd be 9 checkout stands, and only 3 would be open, and the lines would snake around the entire aisle, and I got sick of it. And so I would say, I would mention, I would say at some, I wouldn't say at the top of my voice, but I would say, they only do this here, and scared Negroes, you know, yeah, they only do this here. If we were somewhere else, they would open up more check stands, and when
Hmm.
and I'd said that a couple of times, and every time I would say it, they would immediately get more checkers. And sometimes they would motion right. They would point. I'd be like, cash is green. I wouldn't even be the next person in line, because normally they would say, we'll take the next person in line. Then they would point to me and they say, we'll take you, because they wanted me out there, right? So this was one of those times where the lines were snaking, and I said the same thing, right? But this time they didn't open up any more check stands, and so we finally got to the front, and he took out his check, and the cashier, who was this quote unquote Mexican. This is a story I've told before. You can go back on Blog Talk Radio and find it.
I remember the story.
Oh, you remember the story, right? Because I never get, because I still see him I see him so often when I shop. Humberto, right? It's this pink Mexican, right? He's a white guy. And he refused to do it. He said, we don't cash these checks anymore. We don't check. This, and it was a state of California check. Okay, from the state of California Treasury, okay? And he says, we don't cash these. We don't cash state of California checks anymore. And, we kind of went through some hemming hawing. We didn't do any yelling or anything, but he held his ground. He called the black assistant manager. What was the black assistant manager going to say? And then, we said, and we refused to hold him responsible. And, we said, no, look, we know what kind of situation he's in. And anywho, let's get back to the voice. So we go home. We have to leave the food and the groceries. We have to leave the groceries in the cart. We go home and immediately get on the phone, right? Now I can sound more white than my husband could, so it was my task, right? So it starts. I start calling around to other food for lesses, and I said, the first one I called, the question was, I'll say what I said, and then I'll tell you how I said it and how I found out what a white voice was and what Danny Glover meant. So I don't have a Southern accent just like Cash doesn't. You know what I'm saying? Now, we've talked about the quality of the voice, but, I can tell the quality of a voice, but I believe a lot of white people when they tell me they didn't know, that they were talking to and I can tell by the way they behave. They can tell they were talking to a black woman necessarily. Okay. But I got pegged as black, even without the vocabulary or the accent. And so I called this other store, and I said, well, I have a check from the state of California, and it's in this amount, and I'm just wondering what your policy is. Can I come down and get it cashed? This is an entirely different part of the city of San Diego, and she said, just a minute. And I think she got somebody else on the line. And I said the same thing. Now, understand, I'm heated already. See, I'm heated about what just happened. So I'm talking, but me heating doesn't make me go into AAVE, because that's not my first dialect, right? But I'm heated. And the heatedness showed in another way. But I'm still being calm about it, and she gets somebody else on the line, and the woman tells me no, and this makes no sense to me. So I hang up, and I realize what I did wrong.
You did wrong by not being by using your regular voice. You're saying?
No, what I did wrong. What I did wrong is I betrayed the fact that I was black in the following way. It had nothing to do with my accent, had nothing to do with my vocabulary. I betrayed the fact, I showed that I was black because I was speaking with urgency and too quickly. White people are at ease at all times. They don't feel that they have to get in a certain amount of words in a certain amount of time. I'm used to my whole life. I know I've only got a short amount of time to make my case, because I know I'm an end to you, and if I don't make sense to you real quick, you're going to shut me down. This is what my experience has been my entire life. So when I'm calling, that's what I was showing. But that's not the way white women sound. White women are very relaxed.
Even when, because you were just asking for information. You weren't going there after somebody, did you wrong. You were asking for information.
Right. As if I came to your store, would you cash this check? But the way that I said it was like, I'm making a case. And that tips tipped the white woman off. Wait a minute, this means she didn't get it somewhere else. This doesn't sound like a white person to me. Because otherwise, why is
Wow.
she calling to ask if we'll cash checks that we always cash? That's probably the first thing. And then she caught she caught the urgency of it. She caught how I wasn't light and breezy with it. And this is what I was thinking, because it didn't make sense to me. So I thought that was my hypothesis. You didn't sound carefree enough when you call another store, and this time slow down, take your time, waste her time a little bit between words, because
Mm-hmm.
white women never waste time. All time belongs to them. And make sure that you that's how you call next time. So I called another store, same accent, same vocabulary, same words, but not urgent, wasting seconds. And the
Do
reply, mm-hmm.
do white men also do this breezy, not a care in the world attitude?
Yes, not as much as white women.
Okay. Yeah,
They,
because I've noticed that it's a little irritating with them how they take so long to get to whatever point they're trying to get to.
yeah, not as long as white women, but they sound more authoritative, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They just assume things. They assume it with authority, whereas white women
Mm-hmm.
assume it with time.
Mm-hmm.
You're just going to take care of me. I know that. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What would you suggest? You know, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I did. I just called back and did it that way, and the result. Oh, sure, come on in as long as it's under $500. So I tried it with 2 or 3 stores the same way, got the same response. Okay. And then, the end result was we went to another store, were able to do it, proved that it could be done. And I wrote the company and showed them the proof and mentioned the names, and they got reprimanded and all of that. Okay. So when Danny Glover told Cassius, it's not just the nasally thing. What you need to do is just sound like you don't need it. Sound carefree. And he got the hang of it. And he was a rock star. He was just
He
selling
was.
like crazy. They'd never seen anybody like him. So when the strike happened, they were pissed about it. But the first thing they did, they didn't even they just Cassius, come on in here. We got something. And they had the white woman present it to him first. We are going to bump you up. Yeah. And so they said, to where? Well, to that power caller thing that we've been talking about, where you see these people
Mm-hmm.
getting on the elevator, and he's like, oh, cool, okay. So then they tell him he's going to get a promotion, and he should report to work the next day and go to they're going to take him up to the power caller floor. And when he finally gets up here, he sees the character being played by Omari Hardwick, who what's his and the interest and this is the interesting thing about this slide. If you look on IMDb and you look at the character played by Omari Hardwick, it will simply say Mr. and nothing else. And if
Mm.
you look at this slide, you'll see that the part of his mouth has been blurred over.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do that. Uh,
Yeah,
the
every time they mention his name, it kind of bleeped it out.
Right. It's he doesn't have he's not supposed to have a name, okay? And his so he doesn't have a name, and you're not supposed to know who he is. He's and also, uh-oh, did I lose you? Or did somebody just come on? Okay. I may have to wait for him to. Okay, he's back on. So also, you back, Kofi?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So also, do you notice we're getting to the time when you have to leave too? So I know that. So I want to try to hurry up and get through this.
Yeah, just about. But I got a couple more minutes, so we're okay still.
Okay. Um, you notice where that patch is, and I didn't get it until I was doing the review. I didn't get it when I watched the first time through. I didn't get it till the second time. He's got a patch over his left eye. He's got a patch over his left eye, And that what
Oh, I didn't get that either. It's over his left eye. Okay. And I also didn't get why he didn't. Was that for the whole movie that his name wasn't mentioned, or was there a certain point where they started mentioning his name?
no, there was never a point, and that's why on
Oh, never.
IMDb
Okay.
it never point. And so
Hmm.
what this is emblematic of is this is if you're a chosen Negro, chosen to be the HNIC, to be the what do they call them in prisons? They call them superintendents, right? Where it's your job to do the slave master's supervision, and you get extra for that. Um, it's like what you said about this being a combination of, you see some of the matrix in there. You have to choose not to see. You have to you have to choose not to see the harm that's being done. So he deliberately blinds his left eye. So this is what this it's a commentary on the black people who take these deals.
Okay. I also think that he he was. You said that they hadn't seen somebody like Cassius before. I imagine that he probably was like Cassius early
Right,
on.
right. Yeah, he probably was. But by the way they treated, maybe it was the times because of the movement. But Cassius went further either even than this guy. But this guy,
And
mm-hmm.
he went further than that guy, yes, and also quicker because maybe the reason why he covered or lost his left eye or whatever is because they probably have a process
Oh,
to getting black people into the level that Omari Hardwick was in, and that process ends with him being a docile, what have you. And because of the movement going on, similar to your pops, and similar to some of these more revolutionary people, kind of like who did get into these positions, there was urgency and turbulence, which made them put them in there before they was really ready to get in there, before they was really molded
yeah,
properly
right.
to,
Gotcha.
to get in there.
Absolutely, absolutely. So they may have actually taken the left eye out, but it's also but also this character here that Omari is playing takes credit for identifying Cassius Green.
Mm-hmm.
He says, "You, my friend, are the best decision I may have ever made." So, because they know we know each other better, they think, be on the lookout for the Negro we can use.
Mm-hmm.
But that is not to say that white people don't know us better than we know ourselves, But it's just, um, he's like sort of a Pocahontas. He's a guide. It's helpful. It's a little extra help, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And this is him breaking the strike. So he decides to do it. So you can see the stormtroopers and everything, and he decides to go in and go work for Regal View as a power
Mm-hmm.
caller. And yeah, so he's breaking the strike. This is what I was talking about in terms of the whole Asian thing. Do you see it?
Oh,
You see the Asian imagery?
wait, wait, I think I'm behind a little bit. Yeah, okay, I see.
So in the process of him breaking the strike, a white woman hurls a Coke can at him that cuts him badly in his head, and he's bleeding. So he reports to work anyway with this bandage around his head, but it has the look of a samurai, doesn't it? That's the samurai bandana, isn't it?
Ah, okay, it does. Even with the red dot there.
Yeah, it's because the red dot is the Japanese, rising sun. That's what those
Yeah.
bandanas look like. So he's there. He's still pretty happy. He made it through. And but a Coke can doing that kind of damage because it bled and bled and bled. At first,
Yeah, for the rest of the movie, yeah.
I thought it was an accident until we go further in. Gosh, I wish you could stay longer, but I understand. So I'll have to. I hope somebody else will call in. But so now he's doing great as a power caller now. He's a power caller and he's still kicking booty, right? And so the head of the company is this white guy here whose name is Peter Lift because No, Steve Lift, because Steve Lift can lift you out of your condition. You
Mm.
know, I mean, Boots play on words is just incredible. Um, anyway, so and you see Omari Hardwick kind of ushering Cassius in and saying, "Here's the guy you want to meet," because he was invited to this party that was supposed to change his life. And in fact, he was supposed to go to his girlfriend Detroit's art exhibition, and he did. So he shows up late for this party, and Omari's like, "Here he is. Here's the man of the hour," and yeah, that's what that is. Okay, and then here we are, right? So he's been at the party for a while, and Steve Lift, the white guy, the head of the company, the head of Regal View, says, entertain us. Now here he's sitting there with all his white women around him and a few white men, and he tells Cassius Green, "Hey, so entertain us, man," because he said, because Steve Lift was telling a story about something he did, an animal that he killed in Africa, and then he says to Cassius Green, "Hey, man, have you ever had to bust a cap in somebody's ass?"
Yeah. You kept pushing that.
Yeah. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Yeah, I was gonna say at this scene, it started to get kind of weird for me because I I couldn't relate to Cassius anymore. I couldn't relate to him because he was being coerced. He was being overly coerced so much. He got coerced to go against his friends, to go against his girlfriend, who stayed with him when he was a broke Dusty.
Yeah.
He went against her. He went against his own judgment of what's right and wrong, because earlier in the movie he had this, he was like, he didn't like the society that he was in. He got coerced to you know they started to play him on some, did you bust a cap with somebody, tell me about your Oakland stories, rap for us.
But see, Omari prepped him for it, right? Because Omari said, "This is your opportunity when you get to go to this really in-group party with the CEO."
Mm-hmm.
Omari said to him what? He said, "Man, don't do that thing. Don't do that
Right.
thing."
This is for us.
Yes. Don't do that thing. And Cassius said, "What thing?" That thing where you mess it up. In other words, don't do that. I can't do this because it's not right thing. Don't. You got. This is your opportunity. This is opportunity called knocking. Just go ahead and take it.
Yeah.
Right. So he was kind of taking Omari's suggestion, and he says, but so like I found it critical. He says, so Steve Lift at this point, this is what I mean about white people know who you are. You may think you're fool. They don't always know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
They don't always.
I said the same thing at that scene too. That they chose him too. They wouldn't have chose me. They chose him because they knew that he would have gone for it. I guess something they saw in him. I don't know, but they saw it in him, and that's why he was in that position in the first place.
But if you fool them, it won't be too long. It hardly ever happens when you fool them. It won't be too long till you get found out, because he got found out. He got found out, right? So they say, "Hey, man, you're different, man. Make an impression. Tell us the stories about when you busted some caps in somebody's ass, Oaktown, And Cash is like, "I don't really have any of those stories. I'm sorry, I'm pretty boring. I didn't live that kind of life." He goes,
right.
"Oh, come on, man. And then he said, 'You're different, man. Make an impression.' Now this one right here." He said, the white man said to him, "At least take the white voice off." In other words, this is not interesting to us. We know about you white dudes who try to sound black, you black dudes who try to sound white. That's not interesting. See, this is critical, because what they really, really want, what's in high demand, what you get paid big bucks for, and I can list them. Bill Cosby was one at one point. Oprah is one. Barack Obama's one. There's lots of them. They go on. There's a list of them. What you get paid really big bucks for is to be. See, here's the thing. They don't want to see you completely roll over. It's not supposed to be obvious, okay? Because that's not any fun. It's like shooting fish in a pond. They want you to seem like you are, and I'm sorry to say this is these are the people who are successful in politics and everything else, especially politics, but in entertainment too. That's why the depth of rap lyrics only go so far. Because your job is to ride that line. You have to be a genius to do it. To make it seem as if you're actually opposing the system. You got to be convincing. And make it seem like you really are sincere in opposing the system, but not really do it. And you got to ride that line just right.
Do you got to look like you're struggling to do it too?
No,
Like
no,
like
no.
like you're struggling with your own internal morality.
No,
To,
no, no,
to
no. I don't.
okay.
No, no, no. They have to believe that you. It has to be an act that you're a convicted. Because this is how you lead black people. That this is really what you're convicted to do, right? And and white people want to believe that too. But did you just not? But you can't really do it. You just have to look like you really mean to do it, and that you are saying something deep. Well, do you know how much genius it is to make it seem to everybody, even kind of smart people, that you really are saying something that is counter racist and it has depth to it, while you really are saying nothing? That takes very high level skill. And this is what Steve Lith was saying to him. Take your white voice off and do it. We want a more convincing job. We still want to beat your ass, but we want you to be more convincing, because this is no fun. I'm a big game hunter. I don't want these rollovers. So
yeah, well, Cree, I have to actually head out now, so I'm gonna have to bounce.
Thanks for hanging in for me as long as you did, Kofi.
It was a pleasure.
Make that money.
I definitely enjoyed it. Yeah, thanks. I will.
Okay.
All right. Till next time.
All right. Next time. Okay. It was great to have him around for as long as we did. I think I've only got a few more. I think I can take off the desktop audio now, so it doesn't keep dinging like that. I only have maybe about 5 more slides. Why is it still doing that? Well, maybe I'll just go ahead and take off the conference line since nobody's calling in. I hate to do that. But if I just give me a second, folks. It seems to me if I mute desktop audio, I shouldn't be hearing that. Oh. I don't think you folks can hear it. I think only I can hear it. And if I'm wrong, well, it'll just be there. Okay, so while the party, the Regal View party is going on, and Cassius has left. The aftermath of his girlfriend or his ex-girlfriend, because she broke up with him, because she said, as long as when you break what you're doing, going to work as a power caller and breaking the strike, I have to break up with you. So, but he came by her exhibition, and then he went to the Regal View party, and then he left. Well, then after he left, here's the Asian guy again hitting up on his woman, and she asked him what he thought of her art show, and he said fiery. And then you see her response underneath, fiery, the F, So the next thing you know, it's not showing in here, I guess, but they were kissing and they did everything but. I guess I don't have any more slides. He left at just the right time. So that was it. That's I want to make sure I checked my notes and I got to everything that I wanted to get to. And it would be great if somebody else wanted to call in and discuss it, but I understand if you can't. I'm missing all kinds of slides that should be in here, and not sure why that is. I might try to upload them, but there was so that it wasn't the end of the film. So let me describe what the next part of the film is. At the party, when he took the white voice off, then Peter Lift said, well, at least rap for us. I know you can rap. And Cassius said, I can't rap. I really can't rap. I can listen to rap, but I can't rap. He said, sure, you can rap. Rap. I said rap. Rap, boy, rap. He didn't say boy, but he said rap. So he tried, and he did a terrible job at it. And they were disappointed. And of course, Peter Lift was upset by it because he was supposed to be, a monkey and an organ grinder. And so he finally just took the mic and he just started saying, and this is part of the film, he said, nigga shit, nigga shit, nigga, nigga, nigga shit, nigga shit, nigga shit, nigga, nigga, nigga shit. That's all he said. And then the white crowd at the party started chanting after him. And Peter Lift, the executive, he looked around and he saw that the crowd was digging it, but you could see the look on his face. He was very disappointed because it wasn't convincing enough. And so then, I think because it wasn't convincing enough, he was disappointed because it wasn't convincing enough. He decided to do. I believe that was the tipping point. Maybe he would have decided to do it anyway, but he decided to really do Cassius in. Okay, so he tells Omari Hardwick to tell Cassius to go up a couple levels and down a long hallway and have this private meeting with Peter Lift. So Cassius does that, and when he gets there, these images really should be showing. I don't know why they're not. When he gets there, I have all these images. I'm going to upload this image. This is key. So just give me a minute to upload this image. I don't want to tell you about the image without you seeing it. Yeah, it should have been uploaded. I have no idea why it wasn't. In fact, all of these. And I don't know if this may be interference. Who knows? It may be not. It's going to take me a couple minutes, so just hang on. I'm not going to put on any music. I'll just say my thoughts out loud. Add image slideshow and additional scenes, because dead air is terrible. You never want dead air. And you hit OK here, and we don't want it automatic. We want it manual. We want it to loop, and we want to choose the scenes. So you add this. So you add your files, and you go to where they are. They're in this folder. And the scenes that seem to be missing that are critical are these right here. And so you add those, you say open, you say OK, and then you still have to make sure, it's probably showing right now, you still have to make sure that you can get through them. As you push keys, so you got to change your hotkeys, and then you got to find them. Additional scenes. Okay, there we go. And hotkey for that. Hotkey for that. Apply. Okay. And then just all you gotta do now is make sure that it fits in the window. It does. And hopefully it's showing the way that it should be showing. It's something like I went off the air. It's bizarre. Let me make sure that I'm still on air and I didn't get any interference. Okay, looks pretty good. Yep. All right. So this is the scene. So when Cassius gets back up, he gets to Peter Lift's office way upstairs. He's invited to snort some cocaine, having seen Peter do it at the beginning of the party. And you look at that plate there, you see a horse there that's important. And so he snorts it, and he's waiting to get his offer because Peter says he's going to make him a proposition. He says, I want to pay you a lot of money. I have a proposition for you. So before they do that, Cassius snorts this cocaine off this plate. And in the middle of the proposition, go back, Cassius says, wait a minute, I really have to use the bathroom. He's actually said, I got to piss. I really have to use the bathroom. And Peter first says no, and then Cassius says, no, I really, really have to go. And so then Peter tells him where the bathroom is, and he tells him it's an olive door. And so he runs and he goes down the hallway and he goes through the door that he thinks is olive. But when he goes in there, he hears a voice behind the stall. It doesn't look like a regular bathroom. And hears a voice behind the stall saying, help me, man, I'm really hurting. Can you really help me? Can you help me? And Cassius says, no, I really can't. He says, no, really, man, I'm really hurting. Anyways, so when he opens the door to help what he thinks is a guy behind the door, what he sees is a half horse, half man. And and then he sees a whole bunch of them, and he gets totally freaked out, scared out. He pees on himself. He runs down the hallway, and he said, "What? He gets back to Peter Lift. What the f is that?" And what the f is that? And he pulls a gun on him. And I just, the entendre. I know about the English language. I don't know the other language, but there's sexual entendre in probably 50% of the English language. So he says, what the f, man, and then the gun cocks. Well, a cock is a synonym for a penis, right? And he just tells Cassius to sit down. And close this one. And so then Cassius is starting to wonder. So then Peter makes him watch a video that explains that they figured out a way to turn people into more effective workers that have more stamina and strength by using a catalyst agent. And he wants Cassius to do it, and he wants him to be the Martin Luther King, because he figures there's going to be a rebellion, and he figures it better be one of their guys. So he'll just have Cassius do it, take the catalyst, and then if he does it for 5 years, he gets $100 million. And Cash is like, no, I don't care how much money you're gonna give me. I'm not doing that. And then he starts freaking out and he says, what did you just give me? Did you just give me that? And then Peter Lift, the white guy, says, no, I would never do that. I'm not evil. I'm not deceitful. I would never do that without telling you. He says, what was it? Cash says, what was it? And then the white guy says, well, it was Coke. Well, there's another play on words, because it was the Coke can that hit Cassius in the head and made him actually a national figure. There are all kinds of, the video just kept rolling for all over the channels. It was everywhere to be seen. There were little kids in outfits with an afro and a Coke can stuck to their head. He became the symbol of Regal View, as Kofi was saying. So there's another play on words in terms of Coke. And so it then became probable to me that he was struck in the head with that Coke can on purpose, because as soon as he came into the office, the other black guy, played by Omari, Mr. Who Knows, used his handkerchief to dampen the blood, and he put it in his pocket. So he probably used it to fuse it with his DNA. So another play on words. And in the end, these beings were called Equisapiens, and for the last scene of it, I won't completely spoil it for you if you haven't seen it. So there's a last scene in the movie that's a interesting, sort of shocking plot twist. Hopefully, I haven't given it away already, but that's the film, and that's it. Gosh, 4:15 to 7:15, 3 hours. These things are so long, but that's it. That is my counter racist review of Sorry to Bother You, written and directed by I've already forgotten his name, but I just remember Boots because I know Bootsy Collins was this funky guy with did a lot of work with George Clinton. But yeah, so that's it, and I don't have anything else. Been at this for almost 3 hours as it is. Please, if you like the video, like it. And as if you came in late, I'm also asking as an experiment, if you click the like button, if you could also put in the comments that you liked it. That will, unless they interfere with that, it will help me try to see what the difference is between what they're saying the likes are and what the actual likes are, because there was a difference in the studio view count of likes versus what the videos were saying on the last broadcast. And share on your media platforms, whatever you're on, and let me know what you think. What did you think of the film? Did you think it wasn't all that deep? How do you compare it to Black Klansman and Get Out? And any other thing that you noticed about the film that we kind of left out? Yeah, I'm just really, I would love to chop it up with you. Other than that, I'm going to have to run as well. And this has been the Counter Racist Evolving Engineer platform for Saturday, June 22nd, 2019. And hopefully we will interact with each other next week. Stay safe, stay healthy.